Black Clover, the son of fire dragon Igneel. Chapter 81. The Gap. Edelweiss, she was the second person Drake had encountered in this world whom he wasn't sure he could defeat. The first was the Shinryu Temple Elder. He hadn't been serious, so Drake couldn't gauge his strength. But facing Edelweiss, Drake finally felt pressure. Drake had come to this world by accident, he'd stayed to learn martial arts. Like with magic, Drake knew combat was the fastest way to improve his martial arts. To reach the peak required all-out battles. The problem was that Drake was too strong. Few at Shinryu Temple could provide such a battle. Even with such ability, no one had the will to ignite Drake's fighting spirit. That's why he'd trained Ikki Kurogane. He had the potential and could ignite Drake's fighting spirit. But now, Drake faced Edelweiss. Feeling her pressure, his fighting spirit intensified. Ikki Kurogane looked at Drake. "Let me go first. It's only a minute." Drake nodded, giving the battlefield to Ikki Kurogane. Edelweiss wasn't with Akatsuki Academy. As the world's strongest swordsman, she wouldn't lie about this. She was only stopping them. Escape was impossible, even if they teamed up. They should focus on the duel. It should be one-on-one. Ikki Kurogane glowed with magic. He activated Ito Shura at the start. He knew the gap between him and the Valkyrie. Without Ito Shura, he wouldn't stand a chance. 1 minute was Ito Shura's limit and the bottle's countdown. 7th Secret Sword, Lightning Flash. Ikki Kurogane used his best technique. The blade turned into lightning, striking Edelweiss. Edelweiss's counterattack was a white flash, even to Drake. It wasn't a technique, just a sword swing. But it was incredibly fast. Ikki Kurogane's in iron was deflected, he retreated. He had to retreat, he couldn't read Edelweiss's swordsmanship, let alone counter. This was correct, a flash of a slash past his throat. Drake frowned, he hadn't followed Edelweiss's movements. Drake was confident in his dynamic vision, even if Edelweiss's speed was several times the speed of sound, he'd see it. But Edelweiss's attack was beyond his visual perception. Edelweiss stepped forward, slashing repeatedly, delivering 10 strikes in an instant. She was a dual-wielding swordsman, her attack speed was superior. Ikki Kurogane used his fastest 7th secret sword to defend. Drake sighed, the gap was too large, Ikki Kurogane was completely suppressed. Though he blocked all 10 strikes, his arm muscles were trembling. Edelweiss, wielding 1 sword, was stronger than Ikki Kurogane, wielding 2. Drake wasn't surprised, even if Ikki Kurogane controlled all his strength, it wouldn't match hers. Edelweiss did something theoretically impossible, which Drake saw from her first strike. Edelweiss's strikes were silent. Sound is created by vibrations, energy. Controlling the energy produced by movement resulted in silent, 100% speed and power. But this wasn't possible for humans, Newton would say, impossible. Absolutely impossible. Ikki Kurogane understood this, but it only increased his helplessness. Speed, power, swordsmanship, Edelweiss perfected the basics. Ikki Kurogane couldn't find any openings. Ikki Kurogane couldn't let Edelweiss continue, he was at his limit, he needed to attack. Ikki Kurogane retreated, Edelweiss pursued. 4th secret sword, Mirage Wolf. 2 Ikki Kuroganes appeared, attacking Edelweiss. This would force her to swing, missing and creating an opening. But, naive. 2 Katudo created an unbreakable domain with Reikiri. Edelweiss used her swordsmanship to create an even more impenetrable domain. Ikki Kurogane sensed this, he retreated without attacking. A flash of a slash passed, if he hadn't dodged, he'd be decapitated. 1st secret sword, heavy strike. Knowing tactics wouldn't work, Ikki Kurogane used his strongest attack. Ting! To Ikki Kurogane's surprise, Edelweiss's sword tip touched in iron's tiny blade tip. What perception and precision! Ikki Kurogane didn't create an opening, his surprise created one. Edelweiss seized it, Ikki Kurogane couldn't dodge. The wound was on his forehead, the blood obscured his vision. Luckily, Ikki Kurogane didn't rely solely on sight, he had complete mastery, and key techniques from Drake. He'd analyzed Edelweiss's swordsmanship, rhythm, personality, and thinking. Using this, mind's eye, he defended against Edelweiss's attacks. Edelweiss remained calm. Ikki Kurogane was excellent, but there was an unbridgeable gap. She only needed to suppress him until Ichi no Shura's time limit ended. She continued attacking. Ikki Kuragain saw his only hope. Edelweiss hadn't dodged since the start. She didn't need to. Ikki Kuragain's attacks couldn't reach her. Sixth secret sword, Poison Moth Blade. This transmitted shock to the opponent's body. It was perfect for Edelweiss, who didn't dodge. Edelweiss didn't dodge. The black blade and white sword clashed. But, blood sprayed from Ikki Kuragain. Edelweiss used the same technique. Her shockwave shattered Poison Moth Blade, rebounding and harming Ikki Kuragain. Ikki Kuragain thought he'd seen through Edelweiss's swordsmanship, but it was an illusion. He shouldn't have been so arrogant. Even at his best, he couldn't touch her. But Ikki Kuragain didn't give up. Drake said, "Ikki, seeing the gap is enough, you're not ready to risk everything." Ikki Kuragain was silent. In iron vanished. As Drake said, he wasn't ready for victory, seeing the gap was enough. Drake stepped forward. My turn. Qilin technique in the martial saint. Edelweiss was gentle and kind. During her fight with Ikki Kuragain, she'd held back immensely. But now, facing Drake, she couldn't be casual. She sensed Drake's strength. She became serious. Edelweiss unleashed sword ki, creating a light storm. Dust flew, trees creaked, glass shattered. I haven't asked your name. Edelweiss's presence filled the space. Drake prepared himself. Drake, from Shinryu Temple. Edelweiss nodded, remembering the name. Without words, they clashed. Edelweiss was faster, she was a flash of light. Drake was in full dragon force, dragon scales appeared on his face. He became a firelight, colliding with the white flash. Sparks flew, their figures were blurry, their speed was beyond human perception. Drake gritted his teeth, he finally understood Ikki Kuragain's feelings. Edelweiss's speed was overwhelming. In an instant, Edelweiss unleashed dozens of strikes. Drake's arms blurred as he clashed with her. Steam rose from Drake's body, his pupils constricted. Edelweiss's swordsmanship was perfect, Drake found no openings. Edelweiss was surprised too. Drake was strong, his strength and speed matched hers, but there was still a gap. Edelweiss parried Drake's punches with one hand, then drew back the other. Drake saw sword ki gather, the strike was like a beam of light. The sword ki tore Drake's shirt, leaving numerous wounds. They healed quickly, but Drake was shocked. Drake retreated, looking at Edelweiss seriously. Edelweiss's sword wasn't just fast. His inability to react wasn't due to speed, her sword had no acceleration. Objects accelerate from rest to motion. Edelweiss's attacks went from 0 to 100 instantly. This caused Drake's discomfort, he wasn't used to her attacks. Drake didn't know how to use such swordsmanship, it wasn't a technique, it couldn't be countered. He needed more power. Exhaling, Drake tore his shirt. Fell. Flames gathered above Drake, forming a dragon. Spirit assimilation, blazing flame dragon king. The dragon merged with Drake, his body became fire magic, sharp horns emerged from his forehead. I've been waiting, let's continue. Drake, in spirit assimilation, unleashed his full power, his lengthened dragon scale scarf left a red trail. Clang. A loud sound, Drake's fist slammed onto Edelweiss's crossed swords. Edelweiss's foot moved slightly, she'd retreated. Her crossed swords forced Drake back. Edelweiss stepped forward, slashing with sharp sword ki. Countless flashes of sword ki cut Drake, but he was in magic form, his wounds healed instantly. Drake abandoned defense, attacking fiercely. Fire dragons. Flames enveloped Drake, Edelweiss saw a fire dragon behind him. Iron fist. Drake shattered several sword ki, hitting Edelweiss's winged swords, forcing her back. Hook claw. Drake kicked Edelweiss's sword, using the recoil, he leapt. Wing strike. Drake's fiery arm swung down at Edelweiss. Edelweiss easily cut through the flames. Drake anticipated this, he descended, attacking again. Finally. Crushing fang. Drake's fiery claws attacked. Edelweiss held her swords, like an angel with white wings. Drake saw white feathers falling, they were the reflected light of slashes. The fiery claws were blocked, Drake was thrown back. Not enough. Even with full dragon force and spirit assimilation, Drake couldn't match Edelweiss's sword. Drake made a decision, charging at Edelweiss, his ki changed. Shinryu Temple Secret Technique, 4-symbol fist ultimate technique, Qilin technique. Edelweiss sensed the change, she didn't directly counter Drake's next punch. Boom. A normal punch, the ground shattered, Dozens of cracks, tens of meters long, spread. This Edelweiss was sure Drake hadn't used any special technique. It was a normal punch, but incredibly powerful. Drake explained, this is the ultimate technique he learned and modified from the Shinryu Temple's four-symbol fist, mastered by pushing oneself to the limit, Kilin technique. It unleashes all power instantly. Now I'm worthy of Hyoku's full power. Edelweiss didn't doubt this, Drake was 10 times stronger. He could defeat her. She retracted her sword ki, becoming calm again. But this made her seem even more dangerous. Drake wouldn't hide anything. He clasped his hands, open angle bracket evil dragon close angle bracket and open angle bracket dragonslayer close angle bracket vanished. A light extended from his hands, widening at the end, forming a special curve. A unique polearm appeared. Inherent devices were manifestations of a sword master's soul, they didn't change easily. Edelweiss didn't understand. Drake, as a time traveler, was special, his soul had different forms. Raised by dragons, inheriting dragon power, and aiming to slay dragons, created open angle bracket evil dragon close angle bracket and open angle bracket dragonslayer close angle bracket. But his soul's essence was the bloodline and pride cultivated over 5,000 years. This created another form of Drake's device. Edelweiss looked at Drake's weapon. Is that a naginata? No, is that the great sword from that country? Drake held his device. In my country, a famous general used this weapon, it's named after him. It's called Reclining Moon Blade. This device was almost 2.5 meters long, a dragon coiled between the blade and handle, its eyes glowed red. The blade curved like a crescent moon. It was a famous reclining moon blade. This device's name was the general's title. Martial Saint. Victory and Aftermath. Simultaneously with Akatsuki Academy's attack on Hagen Academy, Kurono Shinguji and Nene Saikyo realized they'd been manipulated. It was a routine pre-7-star sword festival meeting, but when they returned, their flight back to Tokyo was cancelled. Flight cancellations are common, they weren't initially suspicious. But after receiving news of the attack from the academy, they realized something was amiss. The attackers were representatives from various academies, such a large-scale attack had no prior warning. The flight cancellation made them suspect foul play. They didn't delay, they ran towards Hagen Academy along the railway. Both were top-tier sword masters, their running speed was comparable to a train. Japanese trains are much slower than our high-speed rail. They quickly reached Hagen Academy. But before they saw the school, they stopped. Edelweiss was already fighting Drake. Her sword ki alone prevented the two world-class sword masters from moving. Kurono Shinguji smiled wryly. She'd prepared for the worst, but it was worse than she imagined. Kurono Shinguji, not a demon, felt the danger acutely. The sharp sword ki stiffened her, every cell in her body seemed to scream in agony. Nene Saikyo wasn't much better, even as a demon who'd transcended fate, she didn't believe she could surpass Hyoku. But another presence appeared, intense heat and a wild beast. This presence held its own against Hyoku's oppressive sword ki. Nene Saikyo sighed. I underestimated that kid from Shinryu Temple. That old geezer really did send a monster. Kurono, we can't stay here, are you alright? As a friend, Nene Saikyo worried about Kurono Shinguji, who wasn't a demon, and her ability to withstand Hyoku's influence. Kurono Shinguji shook her head. I'm fine, I'm a teacher, I can't let my students fight alone. She moved towards the intense battle. They arrived just as Drake drew open angle bracket Martial Saint close angle bracket. Drake wielded the long blade, the dragon's eyes on the blade glowed, a dragon's roar echoed through the night sky. Flames enveloped the blade, turning its silver-gray hue to crimson. Opposite him, Edelweiss was serious, assuming a formal swordsmanship stance for the first time. Drake didn't seem interested in showcasing his new device, he poured all his strength into his next strike. It would undoubtedly be earth-shattering. The increasingly violent ki forced Edelweiss to become serious, her next strike would be made with the intent to kill. Feeling Edelweiss's killing intent, Drake felt his heart constrict. But he laughed, this pressure was exactly what he needed to unleash his full potential. Both finished charging almost simultaneously. Flames formed a huge fire dragon around Drake, its jaws open to bite the incoming white flash. The dragon bit the flash, Drake swung the Azure Dragon Crescent Moon Blade, striking Edelweiss's winged swords with immense force. Kurono Shinguji and Nene Saikyo couldn't get closer, the surging flames and sword ki leveled the surrounding area. Hagen Academy's gate and all nearby buildings and plants vanished, even the ground was scraped clean. Kurono Shinguji and Nene Saikyo recovered to see the two combatants standing back to back. Drake still held Martial Saint, but the blade extending from the dragon's mouth was cleanly severed in the middle. The perfectly smooth cut was the result of Edelweiss's full-powered swordsmanship. Drake bent, planting Martial Saint in the ground to support himself. Blood splattered on the ground. Dragon force and spirit assimilation had long since dissipated, the deep cut across his chest wouldn't heal itself. Despite his severe injuries, Drake laughed happily. Blood flowed down Edelweiss's blade, dripping onto the ground. Although the sword had wounded Drake, the blood wasn't his. Edelweiss, previously pristine white, now had a stark red mark on her shoulder. It was a wound inflicted by Drake. The blood flowed from it, down her white arm, and onto her sword. The world's strongest swordsman, Hyoku, was injured. Edelweiss turned to Drake, retracting her device. This time, we didn't have a clear victor. I await your next challenge. Edelweiss said, then floated into the night sky and disappeared. Drake leaned on the broken Martial Saint, a wry smile on his face. What did she mean, no clear victor? The outcome was obvious. If the fight continued, he would have fallen to Edelweiss's blade. As Ikki Kurogane had said, Edelweiss was kind and gentle. She didn't want to kill Drake, hence the ambiguous declaration. However, she had also confirmed Drake's strength, hence her invitation for another challenge. Drake wondered if he'd given Hyoku a sense of urgency. Would she be even stronger next time? He didn't want to lose again, he needed to become far stronger. Martial Saint was shattered. Drake closed his eyes and collapsed. When Drake opened his eyes again, it was noon the next day. Thanks to the regeneration pod, the wound on his chest was completely healed. A full night's sleep had restored his stamina. As soon as he opened his eyes, he heard a familiar voice. Drake. Drake. You're awake. We were so worried. Stella threw herself on him. Stella, I'm injured. Sorry. Stella realized she'd been too impulsive. It's your fault for being so reckless and fighting Hyoku. Drake sat up. I couldn't help it. She appeared. I couldn't miss the opportunity. Stella fell silent, then showed a determined expression. She'd decided to become Drake's strength, but she hadn't been able to do anything yet. Although she hadn't seen Hyoku, she knew from Kurono Shinguji and Nene Saikyo how powerful the world's strongest swordsman was. And Drake had directly challenged her. She had to become stronger so she wouldn't fall too far behind. Drake said, "What happened after I lost consciousness?" Stella replied, "Everyone else is fine. Ikki Kurogane wasn't seriously injured, he recovered this morning. Shizuku and the president encountered the one-armed swordsman. The principal and Saikyo-sensei arrived in time to repel him, but he took all the attackers away." Drake nodded. It was a good outcome, there were no fatalities. But even Drake knew this attack had a deeper conspiracy, more troubles were to come. Fu Shaori. Here. I, as the principal of the National Akatsuki Academy, declare that our academy will participate in this year's 7-Star Sword Festival as the 8th Academy. Please witness our triumph. They will show everyone that Akatsuki Academy, not the Alliance's lapdogs, the 7-Star Academies, will bear the future of Japan. Drake turned off the TV, looking out the window. He'd expected this, but it still surprised him. The day after Akatsuki Academy's attack, it was on the news. Hagen Academy's destruction was clearly shown. Akatsuki Academy was clearly a terrorist organization. The 7-Star Sword Festival's organizing committee considered stripping the students of their Magic Knight status. But this changed after the announcement. The speaker was Tsukuyomi Bakuya. He claimed to be Akatsuki Academy's principal and the attack's planner. He was also a Japanese cabinet minister, one of the country's most powerful figures. Akatsuki Academy's full name was National Akatsuki Academy. Unlike the Alliance's 7-Star Academies, it was backed by the Japanese government. He didn't apologize for the attack, he challenged the alliance directly. He aimed to end the International Magic Knight Alliance's control over Japan's swordmaster education system and reclaim Japan's sovereignty. No judicial body pursued the terrorist attack, the incident was deemed an accident. The 7-Star Academies and the 7-Star Sword Festival Organizing Committee disagreed. They were about to revoke Akatsuki Academy's participation when they received an order from Alliance headquarters. The International Magic Knight Alliance would confront Akatsuki Academy at the 7-Star Sword Festival, proving their policies correct. This was as Tsukuyomi Bakuya planned, except for Akatsuki Academy's defeat. Drake had single-handedly defeated Akatsuki Academy. This was Kurono Shinguji's counterattack. Tsukuyomi Bakuya was troubled. He'd planned for Akatsuki Academy to defeat Hagen Academy, proving the Alliance's educational system's failure. But Akatsuki Academy was defeated by Drake. His goal failed. He used his influence to push Akatsuki Academy forward. Kurono Shinguji then released another piece of news: Drake's fight with Hyoku after defeating Akatsuki Academy. Hyoku herself admitted they'd fought to a draw. Public opinion, manipulated by Tsukuyomi Bakuya's patriotism, shifted. The world's strongest swordsman, whom the Alliance and the opposing Alliance couldn't defeat, had fought to a draw. People were more interested in this than national concerns. Ikki Kurogane went into training. The fight with Edelweiss made him work harder. Drake's most important concern was, he could travel again. He'd accumulated enough magic to return to the fairy tale world. His martial arts had improved after the fight with Edelweiss. There was no need to stay. After completing the Elder's request, Drake would travel. His only concern was Stella. His world magic couldn't take others with him, they'd have to separate temporarily. Drake didn't know how to tell Stella. He sensed a familiar key. Drake's eyebrows rose. He'd found his target. Drake leapt from the window, flying towards the powerful key. Kurono Shinguji in the principal's office sensed the powerful key. After the Akatsuki Academy attack, she was vigilant. She was about to investigate when she sensed Drake heading there. Drake's action told her something. She sat back down. Drake flew through the forest behind the dorms, seeing a small girl. She had dark skin and tattered prison clothes. She wore shackles connected to a large iron ball. Drake stood before her. Long time no see. Fu Shaori Senpai. The prisoner was Drake's target. Fu Shaori, Shinryu Temple's most talented disciple in a century, who'd surpassed her limits at a young age and became one of the 4 sages, open angle bracket Teodi close angle bracket. Fu Shaori approached, patting Drake's shoulder. Long time no see. You fought Hyoku before me. Good job. You didn't disappoint the elder. I'm jealous. You can fight freely. Drake said, Senpai, you're optimistic. You know my purpose. Fu Shaori smiled. Of course. I didn't expect the elder to do this. He worried a lot. Drake said seriously, Senpai, will you return to Shinryu Temple? Fu Shaori nodded. I will. My goal is achieved. Drake was puzzled. Goal. I didn't ask. Why were you imprisoned in Kyokuro? Why did you escape? You pursued Hyoku. It wasn't for the title of strongest, right? Fu Shaori smiled. I violated the 5 precepts, boasting about my achievements, so I was imprisoned. As for the reason, doesn't the outside world underestimate our country? We have the strongest martial arts, the purest will and spirit, yet they think we're weak. I can't tolerate this humiliation. I must prove we're the pinnacle of martial arts. Even if I'm branded a heretic, I'll accept it. Drake understood. The elder's strange attitude was because of Fu Shaori's beliefs. Shinryu Temple's most important precept was that martial arts couldn't be used for anything against righteousness. But who could say loving one's country wasn't righteous? Drake didn't think Fu Shaori was wrong. Many at Shinryu Temple likely felt the same. Fu Shaori became serious. How strong is Hyoku? Drake nodded. Very strong. I'm not her match yet. But someday, I'll defeat her. Fu Shaori laughed. Looks like I escaped for nothing. I'll wait for news of you defeating Hyoku at Shinryu Temple. Drake was surprised. Senpai, you'll go back yourself. Fu Shaori nodded. I said my goal is achieved. I believe you'll defeat Hyoku, then show everyone Shinryu Temple's strength. Drake was surprised, then smiled. That's a heavy burden of trust. But I'll do it. Return to fairy tale. Drake hadn't expected his departure to come so quickly. He'd planned to leave after the 7-Star Sword Festival, but his plans were completely disrupted. Drake had to admire Tsukuyomi Bakuya's skill. He'd managed to convince Alliance headquarters to exclude Drake from the 7-Star Sword Festival. Drake was from Shinryu Temple, aligned with the opposing alliance. The alliance, wanting to prove itself, needed to use its own people to defeat Akatsuki Academy. Moreover, the alliance was more wary of the opposing alliance than Akatsuki Academy. The alliance, through Kurono Shinguji, asked Drake to compete according to their instructions at the Seven-Star Sword Festival. Drake refused to be a puppet, he wouldn't participate in a rigged match, he withdrew from the Seven-Star Sword Festival. Tsukuyomi Bakuya and the alliance accepted this. Drake decided to leave immediately. He told Stella, who was training hard, about his abilities and experiences. Stella was stronger than Drake imagined. Although she was initially disappointed, she quickly recovered. She told Drake she'd become stronger before his return. Drake believed her resolve. She would do it, he would return. It wasn't his first time traveling, Drake was experienced. Traveling through countless worlds, he approached the world with the familiar aura. Passing through the outer layer, Drake saw a vast land. Upon entering, he used Fire Dragon's wing magic to stop his descent and hover. He remembered activating world magic while passing through the Eclipse Gate, which led him to other worlds. He needed to determine his location and time. If he remembered correctly, the other side of the Eclipse Gate was July 7, X777. Hopefully, he wasn't too far off. Drake surveyed the area, determined his direction, and flew towards a town. Outside the town, he retracted his wings and walked in. He learned the answer to his most pressing question. It was X784, he wasn't too far off. The original plot started this year. This was Oshibana, an ordinary town in Fury Kingdom. Drake's priority was finding Natsu, he'd be at the Fairy Tale Guild in Magnolia. There was convenient rail transport, there was a direct train to Magnolia. But Drake refused, he couldn't endure the train journey. He didn't have the money for a train ticket. He went to the station not to take a train, but to fly to Magnolia from there. But when he arrived, he saw a crowd, he sensed a familiar magic aura. The aura was similar to his, about 80% the same. What a coincidence. No one else in this world would have the same aura. Natsu was at the station. He didn't need to go to Fairy Tale, he'd meet Natsu here. Drake couldn't wait to see if his foolish younger brother had grown. Drake went towards the station entrance. A uniformed guard tried to stop him. Young man, don't go near, there's a dark guild causing trouble. But Drake passed him instantly. Thanks for your concern, but I'm strong. The guard didn't say anything, he sensed Drake's strength. Drake entered the station, seeing many employees on the ground. The Dark Guild had done this. In this land, mages were managed by the Magic Council. Besides registered guilds, there were dark guilds that disobeyed the council or were stripped of their status. The biggest difference was their missions. They did dirty work the council didn't allow. Fairy Tale caused more destruction than most dark guilds combined, yet wasn't considered a dark guild. They did legitimate work and didn't openly break the council's rules. The damage was about the same. Dealing with dark guilds was a job for official guilds. Natsu was likely here for work. Drake entered the station hall. He didn't see Natsu. He saw a crowd around two girls and a blue cat. Drake attracted everyone's attention. One girl had crimson hair, the other had golden hair tied up. The crimson-haired girl wore knight armor. She said, "Young man, leave, a fight's about to start." The golden-haired girl looked exactly like Anna, who'd taught Drake basic magic. She had celestial spirit keys. It's dangerous to stay. The blue cat stood on two legs, carrying a small bag. It spoke. We'll get blown away by Urza. But it's strange, I thought Natsu returned. Drake recognized them. Urza Scarlet, Fairy Tale's strongest female mage, Fairy Queen. Lucy Heartfilia, this world's protagonist, Anna's descendant, who inherited celestial spirit magic. The cat was happy, a transcendent being raised by Natsu. Drake waved his hand. I'm looking for someone, where's Natsu? Lucy said, huh, do you know Natsu? Happy scratched its head. I never heard of you. Urza frowned. She was cautious, she didn't know if he was friend or foe. Drake stepped forward. It's not a good time to talk, they're enemies. May I help? Urza sensed no malice, she relaxed slightly. They're from the Iron Forest Dark Guild, we're grateful for your help. Drake moved his fists. Understood, leave it to me. Urza materialized a magic sword. This is our job, we can't leave it to you. Drake said, I don't know what you did, but your magic is low. Rest, these guys are nothing. Lucy realized. Urza used a lot of magic to get here, are you alright? Urza shook her head. I can manage. Drake approached the weak mages. Surrender, and I'll let you go. They were enraged. Kid, what are you saying? Arrogant. Who do you think we are? Kill him. Even if you beg, we won't let you go. Drake dug his ears, weaklings were the same everywhere. Then I won't hold back. Flames erupted from Drake, his scarf fluttered. The cat and girls were stunned, his back was like someone they knew. So fast. Urza saw him vanish. Drake appeared among the Iron Forest mages. Fire Dragon's wing attack. Flames extended from Drake's arms, he knocked the mages away. That's. Lucy gasped. Happy, who knew Natsu best, said, It's like Natsu's Dragon Slayer magic, but stronger. Fool brat. The Iron Forest mages charged. Drake used Fire Dragon's hook claw, kicking the fastest bald mage, he knocked others away. He blocked their weapons, flames melted the mace and katana. They crashed into Drake, he grabbed their heads and slammed them to the ground. Care to dance? Drake mimicked a certain dance king. Use long-range magic. Someone shouted. They attacked Drake with magic. Fire Dragon's blazing flame. Drake's flames burned their magic, he blasted the remaining mages away. Boom. A large hole appeared in the station, half the roof was gone. Even his recklessness is like Natsu. Happy said. Lucy nodded. Reunion. Drake clapped his hands, as if dusting them off. As he'd said, the weaklings were no trouble, the fight lasted only a minute. All the Iron Forest members lay at his feet. Lucy exclaimed, amazing. You defeated everyone so quickly. Drake replied politely, nothing special, if the Fairy Queen had full magic power, she could easily do the same. Urza, hands on her hips, said, don't be modest, I've never seen such a spectacular fight. Drake waved his hand. Let's not flatter each other. Your mission is more than just defeating these weaklings, right? Urza realized. Right, we need to find Aragorn immediately. Aragorn was likely the Iron Forest leader, Drake remembered this part of the plot. While Acknowledge was the final boss, tracing the events back to their source, it was almost certainly Zeref's fault. This was the same, it started with a magic tool Zeref created, demons. To revive his family, Zeref committed a taboo and was cursed by a god, immortality, causing centuries of suffering. To end this curse, his life, Zeref created numerous demons. These demons were living magic, each possessing immense power. But none fulfilled Zeref's expectations, they only brought pain and fear to the world. The demons recorded in Zeref's book were considered forbidden, passed down through generations. The Iron Forest discovered one, a flute-shaped magic tool called Lullaby, and wanted to use it to achieve their goals. This ragtag group had no concept of secrecy, they boasted openly, and Urza overheard. Urza, Natsu, and Gray attacked. They found these people at Oshibana Station after some searching. Then came what Drake saw. Aragorn had already taken Lullaby. Urza was naturally anxious to find him. Although Urza had already sent Natsu and Gray after Aragorn, those two were unreliable. Urza considered this. But first, we need to evacuate the crowd. I'll handle that. Lucy and Happy, chase after Natsu and Gray. As for you, thank you for your help. But to avoid misunderstandings, please wait here. Drake shrugged. Urza didn't trust him yet, he didn't mind and found a place to sit. Soon, Drake sensed immense magical power enveloping the entire station. Then he saw Urza running back, furious. Urza grabbed a still screaming thug, shaking him violently. What's your goal? Weren't you going to use Lullaby through the station's broadcast? Why did Aragorn use a magic wind barrier to surround the station? How do we get out of here? Tell me everything. Drake pointed at the now unconscious thug. If you were gentler, he might have answered before he passed out. Drake felt sorry for the thug, already seriously injured, he was now being subjected to Urza's interrogation, even if he wanted to speak, he couldn't. Urza casually threw the useless guy to the ground, the thud made Drake wince. Just as Urza was looking for her next victim, a boy with dark blue hair ran out. Urza. Urza looked up and called out, Gray, Natsu isn't with you. The boy was Gray Fullbuster, Fairy Tale's Ice Make Mage, the undisputed, second male lead, of the series. Gray shouted, "We split up. But this isn't the time for that. The Iron Forest's target isn't this station, but the town beyond. It's where the old man holds his regular meetings, they're going to use Lullaby there." "I see." Urza's expression turned extremely serious. Gray also saw Drake. "Who are you?" Drake greeted him. "Don't worry about me, I'm not an enemy, I'm just looking for someone." Urza nodded. He knows Natsu, he's not with the Iron Forest. But this isn't the time for introductions, we need to get through that magic wind barrier. Gray agreed. "That's right, if we try to force our way through, we'll be cut to pieces." Urza seemed to have an idea. "I remember that Iron Forest guy, Kagura, he single-handedly unsealed Lullaby, maybe he can dispel the magic wind barrier." "An unsealing mage. That might work," Gray mused, stroking his chin. Urza didn't waste words and immediately sprang into action. She remembered that Kagura had gone after Natsu earlier. If she was too late, he might no longer be able to dispel the magic wind barrier. Drake also started to pursue, he'd sensed Natsu's magical power in that direction. Passing through the station corridor, Drake quickly saw the walls and floor ravaged by flames. Through a large hole in the wall, they could see the back of a pink-haired figure, with Kagura sitting on the ground leaning against the wall in front of him. "Natsu, stop. We need him," Urza shouted urgently, fearing Natsu would kill Kagura. Natsu, looking confused, turned around, his eyes immediately falling on Drake behind them. "You are." Urza drew her magic sword, stepping past the stunned Natsu and thrusting it next to Kagura's head. "If you don't want to die, dispel the magic wind barrier." With such a large sword pressed so close to his head, Kagura's face drained of color. But Natsu forgot about fear, he just stared at Drake, who was getting closer, even rubbing his eyes, fearing it was a hallucination. Gray noticed Natsu's unusual behavior. "Firebrain, what are you spacing out for?" Natsu ignored Gray's usual insults and lunged forward, practically hanging off Drake. "Drake, it's really you. Where have you been all these years? One day I woke up, and you and Igneel were gone. You have no idea how long I've been looking for you. Where's Igneel? Where did he go? Isn't he with you?" Drake laughed, but still said with a hint of exasperation, "Hey. Natsu, calm down, you're asking too many questions at once. I can't answer them all. And you have something to do right now. Let's talk properly after you've finished, I'm not going anywhere." Natsu jumped off Drake, grinning widely. "Okay, I won't let you disappear again. Let's deal with this first." Suddenly, Kagura screamed, a hand emerging from his chest. Kagura collapsed, revealing a fat man behind him. "Is that piercing magic?" Drake commented. During the previous fight, Drake had noticed a magical presence moving through the walls and floor. To be honest, while Drake remembered the general plot direction, he couldn't possibly remember such insignificant details. And because of his reunion with Natsu, he'd let his guard down, allowing the fat man to get the upper hand. Dark guilds were dark guilds, they were just as ruthless to their own members. Brotherly love. Kagura was severely injured in the surprise attack. Even if he'd been willing, he couldn't have dispelled the magic wind barrier surrounding the station. As for the fat man, Natsu had already sent him flying. Natsu couldn't tolerate those who didn't value their comrades, his anger was understandable. The problem now was how to break through the magic wind barrier. Everyone gathered on the station platform, watching the raging wind surrounding the station, their brows furrowed. What? Their target is the old man. Natsu, having learned the full situation from Urza, couldn't sit still, he attacked the magic wind barrier. His attacks were completely ineffective, each one was repelled. Drake stepped forward, steadying Natsu. "Seriously, after all this time, you haven't improved at all. You can't even handle magic of this level." Natsu looked up. "Drake, you mean you have a way to get through this magic?" Drake walked in front of him. "Watch closely. Igneel taught us magic that can send even dragons flying, a mere breeze is nothing." Lucy leaned close to Natsu. "Natsu, do you really know this person?" Natsu, excitedly anticipating Drake's actions, replied, "Yeah. Drake is my older brother, Igneel raised both of us. And Drake is incredibly strong, I've never won against him. I wonder how much stronger he's gotten, I definitely have to challenge him again later. Stronger than Natsu. Lucy stared at Drake, as if she were looking at some terrifying monster. When Lucy and Natsu first met, Natsu had blown away the entire port with a single attack. Lucy knew perfectly well how strong Natsu was. And Natsu himself admitted to always losing to Drake, so just how strong was Drake? Drake immediately demonstrated the answer. Drake crouched down, a red dragon-patterned magic circle unfolding before him. Fire Dragon's Roar. A pillar of fire erupted, striking the magic wind barrier directly. The flames and gale wind only clashed for a few breaths before the fire pillar pierced straight through the wind, the surging flames completely dissipating the magic wind barrier. Amazing. Natsu exclaimed involuntarily. Drake's still just as strong. Way stronger than Natsu, Happy stated bluntly, delivering a harsh blow to Natsu's ego. Even Urza looked on in astonishment. Such powerful magic. Only Urza keenly perceived how Drake had broken through the magic wind barrier. It was simple, overwhelming magical power. Looking at Drake's nonchalant demeanor, she truly couldn't fathom the extent of his magic power. Just then, Kagura, struggling to his feet from the ground, said, "It's no use, even if you break the magic wind barrier, you won't catch up to Mr. Aragorn." The good mood brought on by the dissipation of the magic wind barrier instantly vanished. It was true, Aragorn, who wielded wind magic, could fly, they had no way of catching him. Drake walked up to Natsu. "Natsu, here's another chance to show me your growth over these years, I'll take you there." With that, Drake's fire dragon wings unfurled behind him. Cool. Natsu's eyes lit up. "Drake, you've learned flight magic." Drake reached out, grabbing Natsu by the shoulder, and lifted him directly into the air. "We'll go ahead, you guys can take your time catching up." With that, Drake and Natsu shot off into the distance like a streak of fire. Happy fiddled with its paws from the side. "That's my job." Although Aragorn was a wind mage, his speed couldn't compare to Drake's. Even with Natsu in tow, Drake quickly caught up to him. Seeing the white-haired man ahead, his upper body bare, wielding a large scythe, Drake let out a mischievous grin. "Natsu, we've caught up, it's up to you now." "Oh. Leave it to me, I'll definitely send him flying." Natsu had barely finished speaking when he realized something was wrong. Sure enough, Drake didn't intend to let him fight properly. "Wait, Drake, uh-oh." Before Natsu could finish his sentence, he was thrown forward by Drake, the latter half of his sentence turning into a yelp of surprise. Aragorn, hearing the commotion behind him, instinctively stopped and looked back. But all he saw was a pink-haired boy flying towards him, directly colliding with his stomach. He involuntarily bent over, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Drake hovered in midair, watching the two of them fall to the ground simultaneously, and couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, younger brothers, if not used for fun, were utterly useless. Especially this particularly sturdy younger brother, there was no need to worry about breaking him. It couldn't be helped, it was all for his brother's growth. Drake felt a little bad about it. No, he had to hold back, laughing too much was excessively cruel. Aragorn stood up, clutching his stomach, and looked at the dazed Natsu. "Fairy tale. Fool flies, you caught up so quickly. But it doesn't matter, I'll take care of you both immediately, then use lullaby to curse all the guild masters." Natsu shook his head, finally regaining his composure, and looked at Aragorn. "Dream on, I'll definitely stop you. Stinky brat, full of hot air. Disappear." Aragorn extended his palm, a gale force wind blew from the magic circle, sending Natsu flying. Natsu's feet erupted in flames, he leapt high into the air, aiming a fiery fist at Aragorn. Aragorn flew into the air, dodging Natsu's punch. Drake watched the battle below, nodding slightly. It was evident that Natsu had grown over the years, but he was still too naive. Fire and wind magic have a strange compatibility. When used together, they can greatly enhance each other's power. But wind and fire also have a subtle counter-relationship. Gale force winds can extinguish flames, while the hot air currents created by flames can disrupt the wind. The most crucial factor, however, is the relative strength of the two. And currently, Natsu was clearly no match for Aragorn. His flames couldn't break through Aragorn's gale. Especially with Aragorn's gale armor, his entire body was enveloped in airflow, leaving not a single opening. Even if Natsu used Fire Dragon's Iron Fist, he couldn't get close. Drake sighed. He strongly suspected that the memories affected in Natsu weren't just those related to Anna and the Eclipse Gate. He might have even forgotten the very roots of the Dragon Slayer magic Igneel had taught him. The essence of Dragon Slayer magic is dragon power. Flames are derived from this power. And what stimulates the activation of dragon power isn't magic, but the Dragon Slayer's own emotions. That's why the flames of Fire Dragon Slayer magic are also called emotional flames. They become even more intense as emotions rise. Drake himself had always fought using the intense fighting spirit and determination to win, fueling his flames. This was also the reason why Natsu, in the original story, could repeatedly unleash bursts of power to defeat strong enemies. His straightforward personality made it difficult for him to control his emotions, but once they erupted, they burned even hotter than those of ordinary people. Drake couldn't bear to watch any longer and shouted, "Natsu, after all this time, is this all you've got? As your older brother, I'm quite disappointed." Since Natsu couldn't control his emotions, Drake would give him a hand. "What did you say?" The flames on Natsu's body visibly intensified. Drake poured more fuel onto the fire. "What a blunder. Knowing how useless you are, Natsu, I should have brought Gray along." Natsu was about to explode. The flames on his body shot straight up into the sky. Drake smiled. Natsu was still so simple-minded, he couldn't resist such a direct provocation. To Aragorn's astonishment, the wind swirling around him flowed in a strange direction. The flames surging from Natsu created a massive updraft, directly breaking through Aragorn's Gale armor. Fire Dragon's Sword Horn. Having lost control of the Gale Force winds, what could Aragorn possibly do to defend against Natsu? Of course, he could only be sent flying by Natsu's headbutt. Resolution. You're so useless. You let him get away. What are you talking about? It was just a small fry. What's so great about that? It's better than doing nothing. Natsu and Gray, perhaps naturally incompatible, began arguing shortly after working together. Their argument stemmed from the unresolved situation. Shortly after Natsu defeated Elagor, Urza and the others arrived by magic vehicle. But Kagura seized the opportunity to steal Lullaby, escaping unnoticed in the magic vehicle. Natsu blamed Gray, leading to their argument. "You two, is this really the time for this?" Their argument was abruptly ended by Urza with a swift hand strike. Urza turned to Drake. "We need your help again. You can use flight magic. Please go to the guild masters immediately and inform them of the impending attack. We'll get there as soon as we can." Drake replied, "Honestly, I don't think there's anything to worry about. Those guild masters, while they are all older gentlemen, are undoubtedly the strongest mages in this country. They don't need anyone's help. But since you're worried, I'll go ahead." Drake spread his fire dragon wings and flew directly along the railway towards Crocus Town, the next station. Along the way, Drake spotted the abandoned magic vehicle. Apparently, Kagura wasn't an idiot. Knowing Drake possessed flight magic, he'd abandoned the easily traceable vehicle. Drake wasn't interested in pursuing him and flew towards Crocus at full speed. Drake had expected to need some effort to find the guild master's regular meeting venue in Crocus, but upon arrival, he immediately saw a large banner. Roadside signs clearly marked the direction to the venue. When Drake arrived, the guild masters from various guilds were drinking and chatting together. Because a large canyon separated Oshibana and Crocus, there were no other means of transportation besides the train. However, Oshibana Station couldn't be repaired quickly, and the magic vehicle had been stolen. Therefore, Urza and her group had to run to the regular meeting venue. But as soon as they arrived, they saw Kagura talking to a short old man in the woods. Kagura held a wooden flute that resembled a tree root, with a grotesque three-eyed skull at the end. Kagura was bringing the flute to his lips, as if about to play. No good. The others couldn't bear to watch. After all, it was a legendary magic tool. If it was actually played, everyone nearby would be in danger. The short old man in pajamas was Makarov Drayar, fairy tale's master. He was the closest and would be the first to be cursed. Pissed. A person dressed like an old woman suddenly appeared, stopping the others. Although she looked like an ordinary old woman, this short, stout, bald individual was a genuine male, and none other than Master Bob, the master of the Blue Pegasus Guild. This is getting interesting. Watch quietly. Everyone was startled, especially Natsu and Gray, who were terrified by the unexpectedly enthusiastic cross-dressing old man. Then everyone noticed others had appeared. Leaning against a tree was Master Evergreen of the Quattro Cerberus Guild, and standing to one side was Drake. Urza leaned in. You were supposed to inform the guild masters, how come you're here? Drake sighed. I told you, you underestimated these old guys. They already knew about Lullaby. Even without us, nothing would have happened to them. Indeed, when Drake arrived and informed the guild masters present of everything, none of them showed any surprise. It made sense. The Iron Forest members not only searched everywhere for Lullaby but practically wanted everyone to know about their plan. The masters of these mage guilds had naturally already received the news. Urza finally felt relieved and, together with Drake, quietly observed the unfolding situation. Below, Makarov calmly watched the hesitant Kagura. Nothing will change. Weak people are always weak, no matter what. But not all weakness is bad. Everyone fell silent, listening to Makarov's words. Because humans are inherently weak creatures, being alone is unsettling, which is why we need guilds, and why we need companions. To live strongly, we need to support each other. Clumsy people often encounter more obstacles than others, they might take the long way around. But as long as you believe in tomorrow, take that brave first step, and strength will well up within you, allowing you to live strongly with a smile. You don't need to rely on this flute. Drake smiled. Makarov was exactly as he remembered. Although he appeared to be a frivolous old man on the surface, he was actually a wise and kind elder, full of life's wisdom and capable of guiding his juniors out of their confusion. Master. Old man. Everyone rushed forward after seeing Kagura's complete surrender. Amazing. The master's words brought tears to my eyes. Urza immediately pulled Makarov into her embrace, though she apparently forgot she was wearing rigid armor. So hard. Makarov's head made a painfully loud contact with the armor. Old man's awesome. Natsu, without hesitation, started playfully hitting Makarov on the head. It could only be described as fairy tale's way of expressing affection, quite chaotic, yet heartwarming. However, Drake didn't relax. Although Kagura had surrendered, he sensed an ominous magical presence emanating from Lullaby, which Kagura had dropped on the ground. Useless mages, one and all. A low, guttural voice made everyone look up. Black energy poured out of Lullaby, rising into the sky to form a huge purplish-black magic circle. I've had enough. I'll devour your souls myself. With the voice, a gigantic creature emerged from the magic circle. It resembled a legendary treant, but this monster was withered and dry, with several large holes in its body. The monster had 3 eyes on its head, all glowing with an ominous purple light. The monster was tens of meters tall. Even bent over, it towered over the surrounding hills. So this is the true form of Lullaby, the demon from Zeref's book. Drake stretched his shoulders and stepped forward. Looks pretty intimidating. Drake immediately entered full-power dragon force. Intense flames shot up into the sky. The resulting shockwave and intense heat forced those nearby to involuntarily retreat. I'll take care of this guy. An opponent like this makes the fight more interesting. I'm fired up. Drake's flames immediately caught Lullaby's attention. Lullaby opened its mouth, and powerful magic power began to gather within. Without a doubt, a magic beam of this magnitude could easily obliterate a small mountain. But the next moment, Lullaby's head tilted high, and the magic beam shot straight up into the heavens, completely scattering the clouds in the sky. It turned out that Drake had quickly closed in on Lullaby, landing a swift uppercut to its chin. Compared to Lullaby, which had revealed its true form, Drake was practically like an ant. Because of this, the sight of Drake shaking Lullaby was all the more shocking. Lullaby reached out a massive hand, intending to crush this annoying fly, but Drake, flapping his fire dragon wings in midair, nimbly dodged its fingers. Following along Lullaby's arm, Drake flew directly in front of Lullaby's face. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. Drake's fist landed squarely on Lullaby's face. A large sheet of flames instantly enveloped Lullaby's entire head. Lullaby's head was burned to a crisp, with parts completely carbonized. It wasn't just the flames, the force of Drake's punch directly sent it sprawling backward. Lullaby's strongest ability was its curse. It wasn't particularly strong in normal combat. Drake was a little disappointed. he wasn't interested in playing around anymore. Dragon Slayer Secret Art, Shiranui Style, Crimson Phoenix Sword. Surging flames formed a huge bird with outstretched wings in midair. The bird streaked across the sky, leaving a straight line in its wake, like a sharp sword piercing directly towards Lullaby, which lay on the ground. Amidst Lullaby's roar, a giant sword plunged directly into its body. The onlookers only saw the shadowy figure within the flames getting smaller and smaller, until it completely disappeared. It's over just like that, Lucy said incredulously. When Lullaby first appeared, she had genuinely thought things were going to go terribly wrong, but unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, Lullaby had been defeated. Natsu's challenge. After defeating Lullaby, Drake was dragged away by Makarov. The reason? Drake's Crimson Phoenix sword had not only incinerated Lullaby but also completely leveled the guild master's meeting venue. So, they all took off, running back to the Fairy Tale Guild in Magnolia. Makarov took a stamp and pressed it onto Drake's shoulder. When he lifted the stamp, a red mark remained, the Fairy Tale Guild mark. Drake was officially a member. Makarov jumped onto the bar and announced loudly, "We have a new member today. Let's have a feast." Yay! The atmosphere immediately became lively. As soon as everyone returned to Fairy Tale, news of Drake single-handedly defeating Lullaby spread, with credit given to a certain blue cat. And since Drake was Natsu's older brother, everyone was extremely welcoming of his addition to the guild. Leaning against the bar, Drake held a glass, watching the lively scene and couldn't help but smile. Honestly, Drake hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time, the last time might have been when he was with the Black Bulls. Perhaps sensing Drake's gaze, Natsu broke away from his scuffle with Gray. Turning to face Drake, he declared aggressively, "Drake, let's settle this." Natsu's challenge silenced everyone for a moment, before immediate cheers erupted. Fairy Tale was indeed a group of people who loved a good spectacle, a fight immediately excited them. Wakaba, puffing on his pipe, said, "Natsu's as energetic as ever. But I heard the newcomer is quite skilled." Macau, the short-haired older man, chimed in, "That's right, I heard this guy took down Lullaby all by himself. Looks like it'll be a very interesting fight. Men must fight," Elfman declared, flexing his considerable muscles. From the railing on the second floor of the guild, a young man in a frayed coat and headphones tilted his head downwards, commenting, "Perfect opportunity to see if this newcomer is truly powerful. Let's place our bets, everyone. Let's place our bets." Kana, the guild's resident drunkard, immediately started taking bets on who would win the fight. "I'm betting on Natsu. The newcomer looks incredibly strong. I'm betting on him." Happy, arms crossed, watched Natsu and Drake, before turning to Kana. "I'm putting everything on Drake." Lucy couldn't help but comment, "What a heartless cat." Drake stood up. "All right. But don't cry if you lose. I'm fired up." Upon hearing Drake accept the challenge, Natsu was practically spitting fire. A crowd of people escorted the two to a clearing outside the guild, where Makarov, acting as referee, announced the beginning of the fight. Drake and Natsu simultaneously charged towards each other, unleashing the same technique. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. ×2. Their two fists collided, a tremendous boom echoing out along with a burst of flames. The onlookers quickly retreated further to avoid any accidental injuries. "Is it evenly matched?" Lucy asked, watching the two whose fists remained locked together. Urza shook her head. "No, Natsu is being suppressed." As Urza had said, the exchange of blows had already determined the victor. Natsu's full-powered punch felt like it had hit an iron wall. Not only did it fail to break through, but a dull pain shot through his fist. "Natsu, how many times have I told you? When you know you're weaker, don't recklessly charge in." Drake's fist surged with even more power, sending Natsu flying backward. Before Natsu could even regain his posture in midair, he saw Drake disappear from across from him. Natsu's legs erupted in flames. Using the thrust of the flames, he twisted his body and delivered a powerful kick towards the rear. "Sharp reflexes, but you've left yourself wide open." Drake did indeed appear in the direction of Natsu's attack, but with a simple duck, he easily evaded the blow. Natsu felt a tremendous force impact his abdomen. Drake's palm clamped down on his body, and he was spun around and slammed into the ground. Makarov shook his head. These two were simply not on the same level. It wasn't just strength, their techniques were worlds apart as well. Let alone fighting seriously, Natsu had been completely under Drake's control from the start. A large amount of flame erupted from the crater created by the impact. Natsu jumped out of it, roaring as he charged towards Drake. You really have no memory. You can't even remember the lesson from just now. Drake said, closing the distance to Natsu like a phantom. Natsu had jumped so high, his opening was even bigger than before. Drake, naturally, mercilessly exploited this opening, his fist striking like a cannonball. I've been waiting for that move. The flames on Natsu's feet suddenly intensified, propelling him even higher, perfectly evading Drake's fist. I'll return the favor. Natsu yelled, raising his leg to deliver a powerful downward strike. Using your own opening as bait to lure me into attacking and revealing my own opening. Drake laughed. Natsu was indeed clever. His ability to adapt on the fly during a battle was a rare talent. But let me teach you something else. In battle, strength is paramount. Fire Dragon's Hook Claw. Drake, despite initiating his attack later than Natsu, struck Natsu first. Natsu was kicked flying to the ground, creating a resounding boom as he hit the earth. However, amidst the dust and smoke, Drake sensed a surge of immense magical power. Fire Dragon's Roar. A pillar of fire shot forth, instantly dispersing all the dust. Drake was completely engulfed by the suddenly appearing flames. Before Natsu could even begin to celebrate, he discovered that his own flames were rapidly disappearing. Almost forgot, both Drake and Natsu are fire dragon slayers, flames are useless against them. Drake swallowed all the flames and landed back on the ground. Thank you for the meal, my power has surged. Drake said, wiping the corner of his mouth. Natsu stamped his foot. Drake, that's my line. Is it? Drake said with a smile. Then you try it. Fire Dragon's Roar. Drake countered with the same roar, a larger pillar of fire shooting towards Natsu. But Natsu wasn't afraid at all. Why would he be afraid of flames? So, he mimicked Drake's earlier action, opening his mouth wide to try and swallow Drake's flames as well. But, so hot. Natsu screamed, rolling away to avoid the searing heat. Lucy exclaimed in surprise, hot. How is that possible? Doesn't Natsu eat flames too? Makarov shook his head. Their flames are of completely different levels, it's perfectly normal that Natsu can't eat Drake's flames. Natsu glared at Drake. What's going on? Why can't I eat Drake's flames? Drake said coldly, I've told you, you're still too naive. The resolve in our flames is different, how could you possibly eat my fire? Natsu couldn't possibly accept defeat, he was about to charge at Drake again. Drake was eager to further discipline his younger brother. Everyone, stop. But before the two could clash again, a voice halted the fight. Drake turned to look, and couldn't help but say, so, besides cats, even frogs can talk now. Indeed, the one who had stopped the fight was a frog-like creature. However, this frog was human-sized and wore a rather refined-looking robe. The Council and Seagrain. In Ishgar, magic was fully integrated into daily life. This led to conflict and the rise of dark guilds. The Magic Council managed all magic-related matters and maintained order. Guild activities and missions were overseen by the Council, which also investigated and punished rule violations. Even the continent's highest honor, the 10 Wizard Saints, was bestowed after Council review. The Council's power wasn't due to its strong mages or military might, but to its possession of forbidden weapons capable of suppressing anything, and not just one. Seeing the frog, Drake immediately recalled these facts. Outside of council members, such creatures didn't appear in the original story. Everyone stay put. I'm a council envoy. Although the council was destroyed several times in the original story, it seemed to only serve as a backdrop to highlight the villain's power. However, the council directly managed the guilds. Its sudden arrival made everyone speculate about its purpose. The frog, without beating around the bush, stated directly, regarding the recent Iron Forest terrorist incident, Urza Scarlet and Drake Igneel are under immediate arrest on suspicion of 11 crimes, including property destruction. What? Seriously? You're kidding me. Drake, wearing handcuffs, walked with Urza down the corridor of the Fury branch of the Magic Council. After being brought here, they were informed that they would immediately face the Council's judgment. It was truly a magical world. This council branch completely defied architectural principles. The upper half of the building was suspended in midair. Drake felt no nervousness. He couldn't recall the details of this trial from the original story. It probably wasn't a significant plot point, and the council wouldn't intentionally make things difficult. Otherwise, there would have been a fairy tale rebellion against the council in the original story. However, regarding this vaguely remembered plot point, Drake was curious about something else. Lullaby was defeated by Drake alone. In plain sight, the regular meeting hall was leveled by his Crimson Phoenix sword. The council targeting him was reasonable, but why Urza? It seemed that in the original story, only Urza was taken away. Urza certainly wasn't the one who caused the most destruction. Natsu was responsible for the demolition at Oshibana Station and the damage to the railway during his fight with Aragorn. Yet, Urza was the one taken away. There was definitely something fishy going on. Urza understood better than Drake that this so-called trial was merely a formality. Although the council constantly threatened to punish Fairy Tail, it always resulted in apologies or insignificant fines. While they unexpectedly resorted to arrest this time, the outcome would likely be no different. The council understood Fairy Tail. Unlike the reckless actions of dark guilds, Fairy Tail's actions were chaotic but ultimately controlled. But if it involved their comrades or family, Fairy Tail would undoubtedly show them what true lawlessness meant. Most importantly, Fairy Tail openly boasted a wizard saint and 5 S-class mages. Gildart had already surpassed the strength of a wizard saint, and among the younger generation, Natsu and Gray, while not having passed the S-class exam, undoubtedly possessed S-class potential, if not outright strength. Master Makarov also had extensive connections, maintaining good relationships with most of the guild masters. Even several council members and wizard saints were his old friends. Frankly, Fairy Tail had every right to contend for the title of the strongest mage guild on the continent of Ishgar. The council would be insane to target Fairy Tail. That's why Fairy Tail frequently caused major incidents, constantly teetering on the edge of the council's authority without facing any real consequences. However, the council also needed to maintain its face and demonstrate its authority. Therefore, the arrest of Drake and Urza was indeed just a formality. The trial wouldn't yield any other results. Thus, even with handcuffs on, Urza remained remarkably composed. However, this composure vanished the moment Urza saw the person standing at the end of the corridor. Drake could clearly sense Urza's body trembling slightly. Drake looked over. It was a young man with blue hair. He was wearing a well-tailored robe, had a cheerful smile, and the markings under his eyes added a mysterious air to his appearance. Upon seeing him, the previously arrogant frog quickly bowed. The man's position within the council must be quite high. Seagrain, the youngest member of the council and the youngest of the 10 wizard saints. He was undoubtedly a rising star. He consistently ranked at the top of the male mage popularity polls in mage magazines as the most desirable boyfriend. Yet, Urza, faced with this man who was the dream boyfriend of countless women, displayed unusual emotions. Disgust, regret, confusion, and fear. Indeed, Urza, considered a terrifying figure by problem children like Natsu and Gray, the knightly and strong Urza, actually experienced fear. Drake understood the reason: Seagrain's true identity. Seagrain didn't actually exist, he was a thought echo of someone else. In this world, mages, besides cultivating magic most suited to their magical attributes and awakening unique magic, could also learn universal magic applicable to all mages. Thought echoes were one such type of magic. Mages could split their own spiritual power and magic to create an echo or clone of themselves. Seagrain was such a thought echo, and his original was a mage named Jelil. Jelil had split off a full half of his magical power to create Seagrain, thereby deceiving everyone and even obtaining the positions of council member and wizard saint. Urza and Jelil had known each other since childhood. They were both captured by a cult that want to revive Zirf, and they supported each other through countless hardships. But under endless torment, Jelil had finally broken down, exploited and manipulated into madness. 8 years ago, he used the lives of his comrades to threaten Urza, forcing her to leave her companions behind. At the same time, he deceived his comrades, framing Urza as a traitor and turning the others into tools to accomplish his plan. Jalal's fall had inflicted immense damage on Urza, remaining a nightmare for her to this day. Even without knowing Seagrain's true identity, the sight of his face alone was enough to shatter Urza's composure. Seagrain. Seagrain walked over. Urza, it's been a long time. Seeing Urza's wary stance, Seagrain said, don't be nervous, this is just my thought echo. Those old-timers inside are the same, they wouldn't come here personally for such a trivial matter. Urza, who hadn't understood why the council had arrested her, now had a suspicion. I see, so it was you. How boring, she said. Seagrain spread his hands, smiling strangely. That's rather hurtful. I defended Fairy Tale, you know. Those old men just wanted a scapegoat to avoid trouble. Shut up. Urza said coldly, her gaze fixed on Seagrain's face. She didn't believe a word he said. Seagrain moved closer. Well, I just wanted to see you before the trial. Drake stepped in front of Seagrain, who was still approaching. Councilman, although we're about to be tried, that doesn't give you the right to be disrespectful. Drake Igneel. Seagrain stepped back slightly, carefully observing Drake. It's our first meeting, unfortunately, it's not an appropriate setting, otherwise, I would have really liked to get to know you properly. Having finished speaking, Seagrain turned to Urza. Urza should understand what I'm about to say, so I won't waste words. Then, as a council member, I'll wait for you on the other side. With those words, Seagrain's figure dissipated into thin air. And Drake heard a single word escape Urza's lips from behind him. Demon. Mistogan and Laxus. 4 people sat in the council's prison cell, staring at each other in silence. Drake sighed. Natsu, I can understand, but Lucy, why did you get involved in his shenanigans? Today's trial had been interrupted midway due to a disruption. Natsu, with Lucy in tow, had barged into the courtroom. Natsu wore a black wig, disguised as Drake. Lucy donned a suit of armor and a crimson wig, but she looked nothing like Urza. They clearly underestimated the intelligence of the council members on the judgment bench. Did they really think such a flimsy disguise would work? The result was that all 4 were promptly thrown into a prison cell. Lucy said with a mournful expression, I was forcibly dragged here by Natsu, I'm a victim too. Natsu said loudly, Lucy, what are you talking about? Didn't you also want to help Drake and Urza? Lucy's head was about to explode, she bared her fangs and roared, I didn't want to help this way. Drake could only say helplessly, I'm truly very sorry, my brother's foolishness has gotten everyone into trouble. Natsu immediately jumped up. Drake, what are you saying? Where was I stupid? Drake glanced at him sideways. This trial was just a formality to maintain order, we would have been able to go home today. Thanks to you two, we're stuck here. Huh. Natsu tilted his head, looking rather unintelligent. Understanding that he'd messed up, Natsu hung his head. Sorry. Although Natsu's disruption had caused some unforeseen complications, the 4 of them were released the next day. The group returned safely to Fairy Tale, and the newly freed Natsu immediately started causing a ruckus in the guild hall. He was so boisterous that everyone complained about why they hadn't kept him locked up for a longer period. Elfman's words suddenly reminded Natsu. He immediately turned towards Drake and shouted, Drake, we haven't finished our fight yet. Let's continue from where we left off. Drake didn't speak, simply bringing a cup to his lips. The cup contained no ordinary drink, it was liquid fire, flowing like a liquid. This was Fairy Tale's special fire drink, essentially a magically converted, special flame. Previously, only Natsu would order it. Drake's addition to Fairy Tale had added another regular customer. Without answering, Natsu charged forward. Here I come. Bring it on. Drake set down his cup, shaking his head. Natsu, you've been acting recklessly, haven't you reflected on your actions at all? As he mentioned reflection, Drake had already turned around, landing a punch squarely on Natsu's stomach, sending him flying. Instant KO. Lucy exclaimed in shock. Instant KO. Happy shook his head. Drake suddenly felt his vision blur, he shook his head to regain his clarity. Looking up, Drake saw Natsu, who had just managed to stand up, collapse again. Drake always had great confidence in his control over his strength, that punch should only have hurt Natsu. Given Natsu's constitution, it was simply impossible for him to be unable to even stand. Drake took a closer look. Natsu was on the ground, a large bubble forming on his nose, he was clearly asleep. Natsu was often scatterbrained, but falling asleep instantly was a skill of a certain dog-headed admiral. Natsu didn't seem to have that problem. With a loud thud, Drake was surprised to see Lucy, sitting at a nearby table, abruptly slam her head onto the table, and the others also collapsed in a heap. Drake immediately realized something was amiss. A magical fluctuation was present, as if someone had used a large-scale spell. But strangely, Drake didn't sense any human magic. The fluctuation originated from natural magic. Magic knights in the Clover Kingdom, aided by their grimoires, possessed a more refined perception of magic. They could identify the caster by the different properties of the magic. Fairy tale mages lacked this ability. They could only distinguish magic users through more distinctly noticeable magical characteristics. However, the former method had one drawback. It couldn't detect people with extremely weak or no magical power whatsoever. This was also the reason why Asta could repeatedly succeed with sneak attacks. Similarly, Drake hadn't detected anyone using sleep magic. He only confirmed someone's presence through his key. Drake turned his head to Makarov, the only one who remained awake. Master, it's not an enemy, right? Makarov, sitting cross-legged on the bar, looked at Drake and laughed. Ha ha ha. You resisted the sleep magic. That's amazing, kid. Don't worry, it's not an enemy. They just don't want to be seen. Drake nodded. He knew exactly who had arrived. After Mirajan lost the ability to use magic, Urza was Fairy Tale's strongest female mage. This was undisputed. But the identity of the strongest mage overall was a matter of much debate. Drake knew that Gildarts was undoubtedly the strongest, but even within Fairy Tale, few had ever witnessed Gildarts unleash his full power. In the eyes of others, several S-class mages were eligible to compete for the title of strongest. Natsu and Gray were still too inexperienced. The person who had arrived was one of them, the S-class mage Mistogan. His true identity was the prince of the parallel world Aedelas, and a counterpart to Gerard. Because humans in the parallel world Aedelas lacked magical power and could only use magic tools to channel magic, Drake hadn't been able to sense any typical mage's magical power. Soon, Drake saw this strongest contender of Fairy Tale. He was wrapped up like a mummy. Even if everyone had been awake, they wouldn't have been able to see what he looked like. In addition to the staves he was holding and the ones on his back, he carried a total of 5 magic staves of various shapes and sizes. He walked into the guild hall, surprised to see that someone else besides Master Makarov had remained awake. However, he didn't make any attempt to greet anyone. After glancing at Drake, he went to the request board, took down a request slip, and then approached Makarov. After showing Makarov the request slip, Mistogan said, "I'll be going now." Makarov didn't pay it any mind, simply saying, "Don't forget to undo the sleep magic." As Mistogan's figure disappeared, everyone else woke up one after another. Many people had sensed something before they fell asleep. Upon waking, they weren't panicked, instead beginning to discuss the mysterious Mistogan. Gray also started to explain Mistogan to a bewildered Lucy, taking the opportunity to introduce who some of the strongest members of Fairy Tale were. And when discussing Mistogan, his true appearance naturally became a topic of conversation. Just as Gray mentioned that no one had ever seen Mistogan's face except for the master, a voice came from above. "Humph, I know, though." It was a young man wearing a fur coat with the Fairy Tale mark. He was smoking a cigar and had headphones on. A scar ran from his forehead, across his eye, and down to his cheek, giving him a particularly fierce look. Gray said, somewhat unconvinced, "And here he is, another of the guild's strongest contenders." Drake looked up at Laxus, perched on the second-floor railing, clearly sensing the volatile, immense magical power within him. This powerful magic was expected from Laxus, given his mastery of lightning dragon slayer magic. However, unlike Drake and Natsu, who received their Dragon Slayer magic directly from dragons, first-generation Dragon Slayers, Laxus had acquired his through a Dragon Slayer crystal implanted in his body, second-generation Dragon Slayer. Ordinary human bodies can't perfectly adapt to dragon power. This is why first-generation Dragon Slayers experience the dragonification side effect. In contrast, second-generation Dragon Slayer magic is like adding an organ dedicated to dragon power, eliminating the side effects. But the dragon power awakened by first-generation dragon slayers is entirely their own, possessing greater potential and higher limits. Still, a mage's strength ultimately depends on the mage themselves. At least currently, Laxus was stronger than Natsu, who hadn't fully awakened his dragon power. Natsu, oblivious to this, shouted at Laxus, "Perfect, Laxus. I challenge you. Let's settle this." Laxus scoffed, "You can't beat anyone in the guild. You want to fight me? What do you mean?" Natsu, flaring with anger, spat fire. Laxus stood tall, arms spread wide. "I'm the strongest." Drake frowned. Laxus was clearly looking at him. It was a provocation. His ki was hostile but lacked malice. Drake wasn't angry. He knew Laxus was a stubborn man, so focused he'd forgotten his true intentions. Laxus, like the other guild members, deeply loved Fairy Tail as his home. He wanted Fairy Tail to be the strongest mage guild, going so far as to advocate for the expulsion of weaker members. However, this proud, stubborn man's ultimate magic, fairy law, hadn't harmed anyone in the guild, not even Gajiel, who'd recently joined. Drake remained unconcerned, but Laxus's words pushed Natsu over the edge. "Get down here." Laxus disdainfully replied, "Come up here then." Natsu couldn't stand it and was about to leap up and punch Laxus. But as he jumped, a large hand reached out and pushed him back down. It was Makarov, using giant magic. He calmly said, "You can't go up there, you're not ready." Laxus poured more fuel onto the fire. "Oh, Grandpa's angry." Makarov looked up at Laxus. "Laxus, enough is enough." Laxus, seemingly unaware of the meaning of enough, didn't stop but expanded his provocation. "I won't yield the strongest seat in Fairy Tail to any of you. Not the newcomer, Urza, Mistogen, or that old man. I am the strongest." Everyone showed displeasure. Makarov shook his head. No one challenged him. Laxus had the strength to compete. "The strongest seat. Sounds good, I want it too." Everyone looked at the speaker. Laxus lowered his gaze to Drake, who'd spoken calmly. "What do you mean?" Laxus said coldly. "Challenging me? Drake, you. As the head of the Fairy Tail family, Makarov didn't want his children to fight. Unlike Drake and Natsu's previous fight, which was a positive exchange to test their strength, this was different. Makarov worried about the potential consequences with Laxus. Drake waved his hand. "Don't worry, I'll be careful, we're comrades. And Laxus's problem needs solving." Makarov was surprised by Drake's insight. Drake understood Laxus's issues and Makarov's predicament. Most importantly, Drake proactively sought a solution. Makarov felt fortunate to have him in the guild. "All right then," Makarov said, settling back into his seat. Drake and Laxus understood Makarov's stance. Laxus said, "Since you said that, let's see if you have the strength." Laxus jumped from the second floor, landing before Drake. "Follow me if you dare. You can run, I won't laugh." Drake shrugged. A pathetic attempt at provocation. As he spoke, Drake followed Laxus. They left the guild. Laxus, despite his words, sensed Drake's strength. A fight in town would cause immeasurable damage. Everyone reacted after they left. Laxus versus Drake. Everyone knew Laxus's strength. Drake had effortlessly suppressed Natsu. Everyone was excited. "What are we waiting for? Let's go." "Master, where's Master gone?" Master already followed them. Someone reminded them. Everyone rushed out. Drake expected this. He wanted to help Laxus see reason. Simply beating him wouldn't work. He envied the main character's talk no jutsu. He reached a suitable battleground but still hadn't found a solution. He gave up thinking. Why bother thinking? He needed to show Laxus how ridiculous his "I'm the strongest" attitude was. Makarov watched them from afar, his expression distant. Laxus was his grandson. He worried about him. Laxus was strong but immature. His grandson's rebelliousness worried him. He questioned his parenting. He hoped Drake could help Laxus overcome his biases. Without a referee, they moved the moment their eyes met. Their arms collided, flames and lightning erupted. They used normal attacks. Each attack was incredibly destructive. They poured magic into their attacks. Flames and lightning cleared the battlefield. This tested their fundamentals, magic and technique. Any weakness would be exploited. Laxus was surprised. He was completely suppressed. His lightning was repeatedly overcome by flames, his magic control and power were inferior to Drake's. His technique was also inferior, Drake's speed and strength surpassed his. Most infuriatingly, Drake remained composed, he hadn't used his full power. Newcomer, you're too arrogant. Laxus roared, lightning forced Drake back. Laxus became a thunder god, surrounded by lightning, he charged. Now this is interesting, I'm fired up. Drake smiled, flames erupted, flames and lightning clashed again. Knowing he couldn't match Drake's skill, Laxus enveloped himself in lightning, it could paralyze opponents. This was Laxus's strategy, Drake would weaken if he clashed directly. Drake punched, seemingly ignoring the lightning. As Drake's fist extended, flames spiraled around it. Their fists didn't meet, flames and lightning exploded first. Laxus was surprised to see a figure emerge from the explosion. Drake, engulfed in flames, pierced the lightning, reaching Laxus. Still holding back. I'll end this boring fight. Drake kicked Laxus, who tumbled. Laxus's expression was grim. I'll make you regret provoking me. Laxus ripped off his coat, more electricity crackled. This made Drake feel a sense of danger. Using it. Lightning Dragon Slayer magic, Drake murmured. Laxus knew Drake wasn't easily defeated, he unleashed all his magic. Drake exhaled, he aimed to completely subdue Laxus, he needed to suppress him in every aspect. He wouldn't use full power, but some abilities were unavoidable. Dragon Force, activate. Laxus was about to boast after using Lightning Dragon Slayer magic, but Drake changed, he became even more dangerous. Lightning Dragon's crushing fist. Laxus attacked. Drake stepped forward, countering with a punch. Fire Dragon's iron fist. A massive shockwave spread, flames and lightning clashed, then dissipated, revealing the two locked in a clash of fists. Drake remained calm, a stark contrast to Laxus's contorted expression. Fairy Tail arrived shortly after the fight began, they witnessed Drake's dominance. Macau commented, Drake's strong, but I didn't expect him to suppress Laxus like this. Natsu excitedly declared, I won't be outdone. I'll challenge Drake next. Happy mercilessly retorted, Natsu will get one-hit KO'd again. Lucy nodded in agreement. The battle shifted as the onlookers discussed the fight. Even Laxus felt helpless, Drake's strength was flawless, there were no openings. Continuing would lead to his complete collapse. But Laxus wouldn't lose so badly. Dragon Slayer magic is fueled by emotion, Laxus unleashed his full power. Lightning crackled, his coat tore, his muscular physique was revealed. Dragon power caused dragonification, dragon scales covered his chest, his pupils became vertical. Lightning Dragon's jaws. Laxus attacked, Drake saw a dragon about to bite him. A main character's power up. Flame Dragon King's crushing fist. Drake's flames deepened, the air distorted. Dragon Slayers are different. Drake and Natsu's magic was taught by Igneel, they inherited his power. Drake unleashed Igneel's true power. A dragon appeared behind Drake, he punched the incoming lightning dragon. Igneel. Natsu was stunned, he knew what Drake had used. Drake remained poised, Laxus was sent flying, but not defeated. Laxus's scales were tougher than expected, even Flame Dragon King's crushing fist couldn't break them. Troublesome, Drake muttered, sensing Laxus's power still rising. He wanted to end the fight quickly. Mana Zone, Dragon's Nest. Laxus felt something pass through him, his lightning was suppressed. He saw Drake's vertical pupils, a dragon seemed to roar. Lightning Dragon's heavenward halberd. Laxus, realizing he couldn't afford to be passive, concentrated his lightning into a halberd. Without hesitation, he threw it at Drake. But the halberd shattered in midair, it was cracked by the time it reached Drake. Drake caught it, flames shattered the remaining lightning. Drake lowered his hand, looking at Laxus. Continue. Laxus calmed down. Surrendering. Drake shook his head. You still don't understand, you can't win without understanding yourself. Shut up. Stop with the nonsense. Laxus roared, unleashing more lightning despite the magical area's suppression. Nonsense. Feel it then. Dragon Slayer secret art. They both said. Roaring thunder. Blinding lightning gathered in Laxus's hand, unleashed at Drake. Crimson Lotus blazing blade. Drake countered with spiraling flames. I won't lose. Laxus gritted his teeth, pouring all his magic into the attack. But he couldn't stop the flames, his lightning was shattered, he was engulfed. The flames were scorching, even his scales melted. But he felt Drake's will. The flames dissipated, Laxus was unconscious. Drake had won. Drake looked at the unconscious Laxus, hoping he'd learn something. The day after Drake and Laxus's duel, Laxus, his body swathed in bandages, sought out Drake again. This time, however, Laxus spoke with utmost seriousness, devoid of his previous taunting tone. I acknowledge you, but I'll surpass you eventually. Without waiting for Drake's reply, he turned and left. Drake shook his head. Laxus seemed unchanged. At least, his attitude towards Drake wasn't as arrogant as before. Just then, Murajan suddenly ran down from the second floor. Master, a request is missing from the second floor. Makarov, who was sipping tea, hadn't even swallowed his mouthful before he sprayed it out. Laxus, leaning against the bar, said, I saw a cat acting suspiciously, tearing it away yesterday. That cat had wings. Happy. No one could possibly mistake who Laxus was referring to. Happy was the only winged cat in fairy tale. So Natsu and Lucy are involved. Drake looked questioningly at Droy, who had spoken. Natsu, he could understand, but why Lucy? After a moment's thought, however, he recalled that Natsu had first thought of Lucy when they'd stormed the council. Naturally, she would be included in an S-class mission. They just went off to do an S-class mission. What in the world are those two idiots thinking? Laxus, surprisingly, chuckled. That's a serious violation of guild rules, they'll be expelled by Grandpa when they get back. But with their pathetic skills, attempting an S-class mission, they probably won't be coming back. Murajan questioned him, you saw them, why didn't you stop them? Laxus gave a perfunctory reply, I thought it was a stray cat that took the request. I never imagined it was Happy, and even less that Natsu would go off to do an S-class mission on his own. This response was nothing short of provocation. Murajan's expression turned utterly grim. Laxus smiled, haven't seen that expression on you in a while. Murajan had previously explained to Lucy that only 5 people, authorized by the master, could accept S-class missions from the second floor. Lucy hadn't noticed that the master, Makarov himself, wasn't included among those 5. The 5 were the old man Laxus referred to, Laxus himself, Mistogan, Urza, and the final member, Fairy Tale's current poster girl, Murajan. Makarov spoke, which request did they take? Murajan answered, the Cursed Island, Galyuna Island. Makarov immediately recalled the mission and exclaimed in surprise, the Demon Island. Everyone was stunned. Although they hadn't seen the request itself, they'd all heard numerous tales of the demonic curse on Galyuna Island. They all lamented Natsu's incredible foolishness in taking on that mission by himself. Drake sighed, standing up. Natsu's recklessness has caused trouble for everyone. However, I do have some information regarding Galyuna Island. Although it involves demons, the level of danger doesn't reach S-class. Makarov looked at Drake. It's not about the level of danger. S-class missions can only be undertaken by S-class mages, that's guild policy. Drake, go bring Natsu back. Drake nodded. All right. I'll take care of it. But I don't know the way, I'll need someone to guide me. Drake looked around, then fixed his gaze on someone. Gray will come with me. Gray stood up. Since Drake said so, I'll help. Actually, I could go alone, I don't really need Drake. But could you please put some clothes on first? Drake said, his face darkening. Magnolia was a port city, there was a harbor on the other side of town. This was why the Galyuna Island request had been sent to Fairy Tale. Gray and Drake walked down Magnolia's main street, and Gray spoke, Drake, you didn't bring me along just to guide you, did you? Gray hadn't forgotten that Drake could fly. Even without knowing the way, a quick aerial survey would reveal everything. There had to be another reason why Drake had chosen to bring him along. Drake smiled, Gray, you're remarkably perceptive. That's right, I didn't bring you along just to guide me. I wasn't lying about the Galyuna Island mission, I do possess some information. This mission is very much connected to you. Gray said, connected to me. But I've never even been there before. Drake said, you'll understand once you see it. Before we go find Natsu, you can think carefully about whether you want to come along. If you don't want to go, we'll just bring Natsu back. Nothing bad will happen if we don't go. Even if Drake brought Natsu back, nothing would ultimately change. However, when the two arrived at the harbor, Natsu and Lucy were nowhere to be seen. Drake was taken aback. He then found a fisherman about to set sail and asked if he'd seen Natsu and Lucy. Perhaps because they were heading to Galuna Island, the fisherman had a clear recollection of the two. According to the fisherman, Natsu and Lucy had arrived at the harbor at dawn, asking around for anyone willing to take them to Galuna Island by boat. However, everyone was afraid of the demonic curse on Galuna Island, so no one was willing to go. Finally, an unfamiliar fisherman agreed to take them. Drake couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. He remembered that in the original story, Gray had intercepted Natsu and Lucy at the harbor. Why had Natsu already set off this time? Unknown to Drake, the reason Natsu had left earlier was because of him. Urza had already accepted the mission and set off yesterday. Mistogan wasn't at the guild either. And Laxus wouldn't bother interfering. But once his theft of the request slip was discovered, Drake would inevitably come to bring him back. So he simply seized the opportunity and set off before he could be discovered. As long as he met with the client, even if Drake caught him, he would have to complete the mission to maintain the guild's image. This could also be considered a kind of butterfly effect. If Drake knew the reason, he would probably exclaim that Natsu's intelligence had actually been sufficient for once. However, now wasn't the time to be thinking about such things. Drake turned to Gray. There's no other way, we have to go now. It was as if fate itself had intervened. Gray was still destined to go to Galuna Island, to pull his family from the wrong path, and to witness how his master helped him dispel the shadows of his past. On the deck, Drake lay in a lounge chair, a parasol shading him from the scorching sun. Beside him, a one-eyed middle-aged man nervously wrung his hands, showering Drake with fawning looks. Drake couldn't help but be impressed by the power of fear. Despite never having seen Galuna Island's curse, or encountered any victims, these fishermen were adamantly refusing to go near the island. Drake had no choice but to fly there himself. However, halfway there, he discovered that even with the sun as a reference point, it was remarkably easy to lose one's bearings out at sea. The reason for Drake's current situation was that, while he hadn't located Galuna Island, he had found a pirate ship instead. Drake wouldn't be as lenient with these pirates. Even if they were unwilling to go to Galuna Island, they had absolutely no grounds to refuse. The one-eyed pirate said, "Your honors, as requested, we're about to reach Galuna Island." Drake opened his eyes slightly and glanced at them. "Considering your cooperation, I'll let you off this time. But you should really find some honest work." Sensing their key, Drake found that these pirates weren't particularly malicious, they were at most the equivalent of street punks. Perhaps they were recently turned pirates, or perhaps they were simply a bunch of complete idiots who hadn't actually done anything that real pirates would do. This was why Drake had only threatened them, choosing not to resort to violence. Drake rose from his lounge chair. The outline of Galuna Island was now visible on the horizon. Fire dragon wings unfurled behind him, Drake addressed Gray. "We're a day behind Natsu. I'm worried something might go wrong, so I'll go to the client first. You can head over after the ship docks." The original plot involved Gray and Natsu arriving on the island together, subsequently discovering Gray's senior, Leon, attempting to use a moon drip magic ritual to release Deliora, the demon from Zeref's book. Due to Gray's actions, the first battle didn't occur until the second night after they landed. But this time, Natsu, that guy, would never wait a whole day to act. And Drake, having gotten lost, was at least half a day behind Natsu in arriving at the island. Therefore, Drake was quite concerned that something unexpected might happen. Drake wasn't worried about Lion's group. Natsu's strength was more than sufficient to deal with them. The problem was Ultir, who was with Leon. Ultir, meaning Ul's Tyr. Ul was the master who taught Gray Ice make magic and also the mage who used the forbidden magic, Iced Shell, to seal Deliora. Ultir was Ul's biological daughter. She was born with immensely powerful magic. This is precisely why the Research Institute deceived Ul, detaining her as a test subject. This also led to a misunderstanding between mother and daughter, causing Ultir, fueled by resentment towards her mother, to join a dark guild. Ultir possessed a lost magic similar to Dragon Slayer magic, Arc of Time. Even Drake, at his current level of strength, would have to approach time magic with caution. Moreover, Ultir also possessed ice-make magic skills that were no less impressive than those of Gray and Leone. Although Ultir wouldn't seriously engage Natsu to avoid revealing her identity, Drake was concerned that Natsu's persistent personality might cause trouble. Drake could sense that most of the island was wild terrain, so he flew towards the area with the strongest magical presence. As soon as Drake approached the village, he spotted an unusual creature in the air above it. It was a giant rat, nearly 10 meters long, wearing a lacy dress. Most surprisingly, the rat's tail stood upright, rotating in the air like a propeller, enabling this enormous rodent to fly effortlessly through the air. The giant rat was also carrying a large bucket in its paws. Just from the smell, Drake could guess that its contents were definitely not safe. Drake also saw 3 people standing on the rat's back. These 3 were likely Lion's accomplices. Their presence here indicated that things were only just beginning. The worst-case scenario Drake had envisioned hadn't yet materialized. However, seeing the giant rat about to pour the contents of the bucket, Drake couldn't stand by idly. Fire Dragon's Roar. Just as the viscous blue-purple liquid began to fall, a pillar of fire shot out, instantly engulfing it completely. The 3 people on the rat's back turned to look at Drake, all displaying displeased expressions. But Drake's expression was even grimmer, so dark and intense that it was frightening. I don't care what you're planning on this island, but involving innocent villagers is utterly unacceptable. The 3 were startled by Drake's expression, but they quickly recovered their composure. The man with exceptionally thick eyebrows said, "A newcomer we haven't seen before, or you reinforcements from the Fire Dragon. This is just troublesome." The girl among the 3 spoke up. Sub-Zero's orders are to eliminate anyone who stands in his way. If we don't hurry, we'll lose Sub-Zero's love. Another man, with the face of a feline, said, "It's just 1 more person, 5 more minutes should be enough, right?" The girl pointed at Drake. "Angelica, take him down." Angelica was the name of the giant rat she was riding. The girl was Sherry, a former mage from Lamia Scale. Her magic was puppet magic, allowing her to control any non-human object. The giant rat roared, turning to charge at Drake. Drake remained motionless, simply raising his head to look into Angelica's eyes. The giant rat's charging motion froze. It had seen a pair of eyes that had transformed into vertical pupils, and it had also seen the roaring shadow of a giant dragon behind Drake. Animals possess a far keener sense of danger than humans, especially when the difference in life forms is significant. The terror of facing a creature at the very top of the food chain caused Angelica's heart to momentarily stop. This brief moment of hesitation was a critical mistake. The rat froze completely, its rotating tail coming to a halt. Unlike Happy, whose wings were merely a manifestation of flight magic, not actual wings for flight, once its tail stopped, it plummeted straight down. Drake had initially intended to send them flying with a single attack, but seeing them screaming as they fell, he lost his motivation to pursue them. Drake turned and flew towards the village. Before he even landed, he spotted Natsu and Lucy attempting to sneak away. Actually, Natsu had noticed the 3 when they approached. Seeing the fire pillar that had neutralized the threat, he naturally guessed that Drake had arrived. Feeling guilty, they naturally tried to escape, but just as Natsu and Lucy turned to find a place to hide, their shoulders were firmly seized. "Hey! Just where do you 2 think you're going?" Cold sweat poured down Natsu and Lucy's faces. They trembled as they turned to face Drake. Natsu, forcing a smile, waved his hand. "Hey, Drake. What a coincidence." Drake landed a punch that created a large bump on Natsu's head, angrily shouting, "Coincidence? I came here specifically for you." Lucy had also intended to speak, but seeing Drake's furious expression, she immediately shut her mouth. Taking a couple of steps back, Lucy began to delude herself, praying that Drake wouldn't notice her. Happy went even further. He hid directly behind Drake. "Drake, they forced me to do it." Lucy couldn't help but retort, "Traitor." Drake sighed. "I'm completely done with you 2. The punishment for your unauthorized S-class mission will be decided by the master later. For now, tell me exactly what's going on here." The truth. Thanks to Lucy's explanation, Drake finally understood the situation. After arriving on the island, Lucy and Natsu learned the mission details from the village elder. The elder explained that the moon had been problematic for 3 years. At night, villagers exposed to moonlight transformed into demons. The elder had even killed his demon-possessed son. He asked Natsu and Lucy to destroy the moon. Natsu was enthusiastic, but Lucy was more sensible. Destroying the moon was impossible, the curse had another cause. Lucy led Natsu to find the curse's source, an abandoned temple. They found the frozen Deliora at the temple's base, but so did Leon and his group. A fight started. Leon froze Natsu, happy, and Lucy rescued him. The village was the only settlement. Lion's men planned to destroy it. Natsu's flames couldn't melt Lion's ice because he wasn't serious. He rarely tried hard unless his comrades or fairy tale were involved. But Drake believed things would be different now. Leon attacking villagers crossed Natsu's line. Natsu would be serious now. Drake pondered, addressing Natsu and Lucy. Gray came with me, I'll tell you everything when he arrives. Natsu jumped. What? That droopy-eyed fool is here. Who are you calling, droopy-eyed? Natsu and Gray had a strange connection. Gray's voice came from outside. Gray entered. Drake stopped Natsu from attacking Gray. Gray, I'll tell you everything. Drake paused. First, the frozen monster Natsu and Lucy found is Deliora, a demon from Zeref's book, like Lullaby. Gray jumped up. Deliora. Impossible. It's not here, because. Drake said, it was sealed in the North Continent 10 years ago. Someone brought it here. Gray controlled his anger. Who? He knows Deliora is a disaster. Drake replied, Leon, also known as Sub-Zero. Gray was shocked. Drake continued, they brought Deliora here to use the moon drip in the moon temple to unseal him. Iced shell, couldn't be undone, but moon drip can undo any magic. The island's curse is caused by moon drip's waste gas. Gray hung his head. Why did Leon do this? Drake said, a disciple wanting to surpass his deceased master, defeating an opponent his master couldn't. Gray was pained. Ul isn't dead, she's frozen with Deliora. Leon wants to melt the ice, he's killing Ul. Natsu was confused. Who are Leon and Ul? Drake said, Leon is Gray's senior, Ul is their master, she sealed Deliora, sacrificing herself. Natsu was silent, he understood Gray's pain. Gray looked at Drake, smiling wryly. That's why this mission concerns me. Drake sighed. Face your shadows. Lion's mistake must be corrected by you. Lion's mistake wasn't unsealing Deliora, but his methods. Wanting to surpass his master was fine, but his recklessness became obsession. Leon didn't know Deliora was dead, he didn't consider the consequences of unsealing him. Even if he could defeat Deliora, ordering the village's destruction showed he was insane. Gray looked determined. I'll end this. Even if it costs my life, it's my responsibility. Natsu kicked Gray, sending him flying into a wall. Natsu, what are you doing? I'm not fighting you now. Gray said, rubbing his head. But Gray saw Natsu's serious face. Are you crazy? That's my prey, you can't take it. Gray grabbed Natsu's scarf. I said it's my responsibility. Because of me, Ul used iced shell, I need closure. Lucy said, don't fight now. Drake stopped Lucy. Leave it to Natsu. Happy said, Lucy worries too much. Lucy said, traitor, shut up. But she said nothing else. Natsu was reliable when comrades needed help. Natsu looked at Gray. Closure. You're escaping. Gray let go of Natsu, silent. Natsu fixed his scarf. Are you afraid of losing to Leon? If you're not confident, let me defeat him. I won't lose. I'll win easily. Gray's depression vanished. Natsu challenged, we'll see. Losing would be embarrassing. It's not just your reputation. I know. Gray replied. It's fairy tale's reputation. They both said, determined. Drake smiled. Natsu and Gray's bond was deep. Natsu didn't preach, but he helped Gray. Gray, with fairy tale's support, wouldn't lose to Leon. Approaching the moon temple, Drake sensed numerous magical presences within. Drake recalled that Lion's 3 underlings were former members of Lamia Scale. Besides them, Leon had unidentified accomplices. Drake suspected Ultir was behind this. Ultir's involvement. Drake suspected she'd told Leon about Moondrip and helped transport Deliora. She wanted to use Deliora to power the R system in Jalal's Tower of Heaven. The Tower of Heaven was Jalal's project to revive Zeref. It needed 2.7 billion joules of magic power. They hadn't expected Ul's power to destroy even a demon from Zeref's book. Later, they'd use the council's magic to gather the needed power. Ultir's accomplices were likely Dark Guild members. In the original story, they were insignificant. Drake looked back. As planned, Gray fights Leone, Natsu and Lucy handle the others. Don't interfere with Gray. One's troublesome, I'll handle her. Forget the plan, you won't follow it anyway. Start. Defeat your opponents and complete the mission. Everyone nodded. Drake flew to the top level, sensing a powerful magic presence. Ultir's magic was stronger than Natsu's. Lucy looked at Drake. I wish I could fly. Natsu grabbed Happy. I have Happy. Happy, take me up. Happy shook his head. No. Drake will send Natsu flying. Drake sensed Ultir approaching. At the temple's top, Drake saw a masked, thin old man. Ultir's transformation magic was flawless. But, Drake smelled perfume. Ultir, disguised as an old man, said, an impressive person has arrived. Drake landed, facing Ultir. You're confident, you knew we were coming, you didn't escape. Ultir acted comically, unconcerned about being discovered. We have a mission, escaping isn't an option. Shouldn't the strongest be facing Sub-Zero? Why me? Drake waved his hand. Sub-Zero will be handled. You're more dangerous. Ultir stopped. She suspected Drake knew something. Drake punched, shattering a crystal ball. Women should be gentler, don't ambush. Ultir said, how did you know? Drake replied, your transformation magic is great, but don't use such strong perfume. Ultir laughed, her voice became feminine. Sharp. I underestimated you. Drake dodged a crystal ball. Complimenting while attacking is bad. Arc of time is amazing. Ultir suspected Drake knew her magic. She didn't plan to hide it, but his actions made her wary. Ultir said, I underestimated you. Drake's body blazed. It's too early, I haven't used my full power. A crystal ball pierced the flames, heading for Drake's head. Drake heard it, he caught it. Ultir controlled the crystal ball's time, making it move quickly. Even if destroyed, she could revert it. Drake didn't catch it, it stopped instantly, Drake missed. It circled Drake. Time magic was strange, Drake couldn't counter it. But magic is used by mages, he could defeat Ultir. Drake dodged a crystal ball, charging at Ultir. He punched, shattering a crystal ball, his foot sank, the ground crumbled. The temple was sturdy, why did it break? Ultir accelerated the ground's time, even strong materials weaken with time. Drake launched himself into the air. But a crystal ball fell from above. Watching Drake fall, Ultir said, the moon's appearing, you can't stay. Ultir jumped down, the hole closed. Accomplices appeared, waiting for the moon to complete the moon drip ritual. Drake fell from the top to the bottom, the crystal ball vanished. Drake landed, seeing the frozen Deliora. Ultir landed on a stalactite. Don't use Dragon Slayer magic here, the ice will melt faster. Drake ignored her, unleashing flames. This is Ul's ice, her soul and will are in it, it won't melt. Ultir froze, her ki became volatile. Ultir's resentment towards Ul was clear. The unsealing in Ul's memories. Ultir's arc of time was incredibly powerful magic, she controlled the entire environment. However, Drake's combat abilities had evolved beyond simply understanding the environment, he now adapted to it. With his preparations, Ultir couldn't stop Drake from approaching. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. Ultir knew her petty tricks were useless, but she needed to stall Drake. Future Sight. Countless crystal balls appeared in the air, summoned from different points in time. They rained down on Drake, he countered with a blast of intense flames. The crystal balls melted instantly upon contact. But there were too many, as soon as one batch melted, more appeared. Facing this onslaught, Drake exhaled, then began to move. Four Fist, Azure Dragon, Flowing Water. Drake's skills extended beyond magic. Having traversed multiple worlds and mastered diverse abilities, he was confident facing any opponent. The continuous barrage of crystal balls only pierced Drake's afterimages, while he, like a flowing stream of water, weaved through the gaps between them, slowly, closing in on Ultir. Ultir soon realized that slowness was a mere illusion. In the blink of an eye, Drake had crossed the distance between them and stood before her. If the Azure Dragon style of the Four Gods' Fist only possessed the ability to evade enemy attacks, it wouldn't have deserved to be passed down as a secret martial art for millennia. The most formidable aspect of the Azure Dragon style was its dreamlike footwork, capable of creating illusions of distance and space for the opponent. While appearing incredibly slow, its actual speed was as swift as a sudden gust of wind or a flash of lightning. Even Ultir was caught completely off guard. Ultir possessed considerable experience fighting mages, yet she had never encountered such a technique. Mages typically clashed using various spells, even someone like Natsu, who amplified his strength with flames, was already quite rare. Drake's martial arts were a technique Ultir had never even witnessed before. Ultir attempted to retreat, but Drake's fist had already exploited an opening she'd inadvertently presented, striking her squarely in the abdomen. Facing the masked face, Drake showed no mercy. The full force of his punch landed on Ultir, sending her flying. Ultir smashed through the cave's stalactites before colliding heavily with the cave wall. It was unclear how severely Ultir was injured, but the crystal balls she'd summoned using Arc of Time had all vanished. However, Drake could clearly sense that Ultir's ki hadn't weakened in the slightest, so he remained vigilant. From amidst the dust and debris, footsteps could be heard, and Drake was surprised to see a tall figure emerge. The immense magical power infused in Drake's earlier punch had disrupted the flow of magic within Ultir's body, not only breaking the Arc of Time spell but also dispelling her transformation magic. Ultir had long, jet black hair. Beneath her neatly arranged bangs was a strikingly attractive face. Drake regarded her with an appreciative gaze, saying, "So that's your true form. You're truly quite beautiful." Ultir laughed, seemingly completely unconcerned that Drake had just unleashed a full-powered punch upon her. "Well, thank you for the compliment," Ultir said, holding a crystal ball in her hand as she approached Drake. "But are you really wasting your time like this? You should know that the moon has already begun to rise." Drake and the others had set out at dusk. While not much time had passed, night had indeed fallen. The moment Ultir finished speaking, a magic circle opened above the ice-encased Deliora, and a bright white beam of light descended upon him. Ultir said, "I see you're not the least bit worried. So, are you confident that you can handle Deliora even if he awakens?" Drake shook his head. "Deliora won't awaken, there's absolutely no need to rush." Ultir stepped forward, and countless crystal balls once again appeared, radiating magical energy. "Do you think you can get rid of me so easily, or do you think your companions will arrive in time to stop the moon drip ritual?" Drake shook his head, simply offering a mysterious smile without answering. Crystal balls, being exceptionally efficient conductors of magical power, fired beams of magical energy under Ultir's control. Drake once again employed the Azure Dragon style, weaving his way through the beams of magical energy. These beams were incredibly powerful, and their sheer number was quite considerable, resembling a relentless aerial bombardment. Yet, Drake moved through them with ease and grace. Ultir had absolutely no way to counter Drake's technique, so she resorted to the simplest method possible. The stones at the top of the cave had their temporal flow accelerated, causing the entire ceiling to collapse. Ultir watched as Drake was buried under the rubble, her expression serious. If Drake were so easily dealt with, she wouldn't be experiencing this level of anxiety. Sure enough, a surge of flames erupted, and the heavy rocks were instantly flung aside. Drake jumped out from the pile of debris, his arms ablaze like wings, striking directly at Ultir. Fire Dragon's wing blow. The solidified flames instantly cleared the crystal balls from the air, hurtling towards Ultir. Ultir, prepared for this, deftly hopped from crystal ball to crystal ball, evading Drake's attack. But Drake immediately pursued Ultir. Time magic is indeed amazing, but my dear lady, the greatest aspect of magic lies in. Drake, showing no mercy, unleashed a devastating fire dragon's iron fist, knocking Ultir to the ground. Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed through the cave, causing a sharp pain in Drake's eardrums. The sound resembled the roar of some creature, and its source was clearly Deliora, still encased in ice. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, the vibrations emanating from the direction of Deliora. Ultir, lying on the ground, laughed. "It's too late now, the moon drip ritual is complete, Deliora is about to be resurrected." Footsteps approached, and Drake saw Gray descending from the passageway. Although he was covered in wounds, they didn't appear to be too serious. "Too late," Gray said grimly, his face clouded with despair. "He's still going to be resurrected." Deliora was the one who had destroyed Gray's hometown, taken his parents' lives, and caused his master's sacrifice. Deliora was the source of Gray's deepest shadows and hatred. Seeing Deliora about to awaken, how could he possibly remain calm? Under the enveloping white beam of light, the ice encasing Deliora began to melt rapidly, revealing Deliora's grotesque form. Gray gritted his teeth, finally crossing his arms in a specific pose. The magic within him transformed into an intense, bone-chilling cold, capable of freezing everything. This was the stance for unleashing the forbidden magic. Iced Shell. Aside from Iced Shell, Gray couldn't think of any other way to counter a resurrected Deliora. Drake delivered a swift hand chop to Gray, knocking him to the ground. Gray scrambled to his feet, saying, "What are you doing? Don't you know what will happen if Deliora awakens?" Drake said, "Don't be so hasty. Watch closely, your master was a truly magnificent mage." Gray's pupils dilated, he stared at Deliora in disbelief. The ice completely melted, revealing Deliora in a roaring pose. Strangely, the eerie howls that had been echoing ceased the moment the ice melted away. Crack. To Gray's astonishment, a crack appeared on Deliora's arm, and then the entire arm fell off. The shattering of the arm seemed to serve as a signal. Cracks began to spread across Deliora's entire body. The enormous demon shattered into pieces right before Gray's very eyes. Drake sighed. Iced Shell is a sealing magic, but your master took the life of an immortal demon over 10 years. Without waiting for the still dazed Gray to react, Drake turned towards Altair, who was still lying on the ground. Water from the melting ice flowed over her body. Drake saw an expression of utter disbelief on her face. For she heard the voice of the person she had always hated, the person she had always longed to see again. "Please, save her. Please save her, I beg of you." This child's magical power was frightening from birth. "Dead. You said she's dead, what does that even mean? Why? What happened? You yourselves said you had a way to cure the child. I heard you were a specialized treatment facility. How? How could you? Don't leave. Give me back my daughter." Altair. Iced Shell transformed the mage's body into ice. Altair was experiencing Ul's memories. "When that child was born, I felt a ray of light shine into my life, and I filled with hope and dreams for her future. I was truly happy at that time. Her tiny body radiated endless possibilities, the power of life, that power moved me to tears. That child is the testament to my life, and she is also my tears." Altair. Drake knelt beside Altair. "Did you hear that? Your mother's true feelings. My third application for serialization has been rejected. The book's data and word count are fine. I don't understand the reason. Resolution in the future. Although Deliora had self-destructed, the S-class mission wasn't complete. Galuna Island's curse wasn't caused by Deliora, but by the residual energy from the moon drip ritual and the islanders' true identities. Drake explained to the others, "The moon drip ritual is over, the source is gone. Now we just need to deal with the side effects." Natsu, like a child, raised his hand. "How do we do that?" Drake pointed to the sky. "Simple, destroy that." Everyone looked up. Only a strangely colored moon was visible. "No way. You really mean destroy the moon? That's impossible," Lucy exclaimed. Drake said, "Don't worry, it's not that dramatic." Drake spread his fire dragon wings and flew up, quickly becoming a small red dot in the sky. Drake knew the truth. Moondrip's waste gas affected the villagers' memories, not their bodies. The villagers weren't human. They were rare demons. Unlike Zarif's magical creatures, they were a unique race with demonic appearances. Moondrip's waste gas made them believe they were human. At night, the ritual's power reversed their transformations, revealing their true forms, causing the demonic curse. Drake looked at the red magical film above and began to gather power. In the original story, Urza used a holy spear to break this film, but Drake's flames were just as effective. Fire dragons roar. To the astonishment of Natsu and the others, a massive pillar of fire shot out, but it spread in midair as if it had struck something. From their perspective, it looked as if the fire pillar had actually hit the moon. "No way." Gray muttered incredulously. Happy spun around in circles. "Oh no. Drake's going to burn down the moon." But Lucy suddenly said, "Wait, look." Within the spreading flames, the moon's red hue was disappearing, with traces of the flames extending to its edges. "Burn it to ashes." The speed at which the flames spread suddenly increased, forming a hemisphere encompassing the entire island. Within 3 seconds, the waste gas above the island was completely incinerated. With no more fuel, the flames died down. A clear night sky appeared before them. Drake returned to the ground but didn't rejoin Natsu and the others. Ultir looked up at the night sky. The magnificent flames had brought a certain brightness to her face. Drake landed beside her, retracting his fire dragon wings. Ultir smirked. No need to be so wary, I'm no longer your enemy. Drake said, I knew that already. I wanted to ask about your plans. Ultir looked at her hands. I wanted to change everything, go back to the beginning. Unknowingly, I made many foolish mistakes. Even if I could return to the past, these bloodstained hands couldn't embrace Mother again. Drake understood Ultir's feelings. He knew the meaning of her name from Ul's memories. Ul's tears were shed out of overwhelming emotion for the power of life and boundless hope, while Ultir, bearing the demon heart, had always been surrounded by lies, death, and despair. Drake had previously been averse to the idea of laying down one's sword, but with his increased experience, he had come to understand the true meaning of this phrase. To lay down one's sword meant to relinquish not the physical weapon, but the sword within one's heart. It meant to sincerely repent for one's past wrongdoings. And didn't imply escaping the consequences of one's sins. Instead, it meant to carry the burden of all one's sins within one's heart, filled with remorse, and to dedicate oneself to atoning for those sins to the best of one's ability. Drake wouldn't forgive Ultir on behalf of the victims, but he didn't dislike those who were willing to pay the price for their mistakes. In the original storyline, Rogue from the future world deceived the king of the Fury Kingdom, opening the Eclipse Gate in an attempt to return the world to the Age of Dragons. To prevent this disastrous future where the world was ravaged by dragons, Ultir risked her life, using Arc of Time to rewind the entire world by 1 minute. Although it was only a single minute, it saved countless mages from death and served as the starting point for humanity's counterattack. However, the backlash from the magic caused her to lose a significant amount of her lifespan, transforming her into a frail, elderly woman. Ultir looked at Drake's peculiar expression. What's with that sympathetic look? I'm not that pathetic. Drake put aside the thoughts stirred by the events of the future storyline and said, if you haven't decided where to go, how about Fairy Tale? Ultir shook her head. I'm not worthy of standing in the sunlight right now, but, perhaps after I've taken care of some other matters, I'll consider it. Drake said nothing further. It was Ultir's own decision, and he had no right to change it. Ultir stood up, looking at Drake. Aren't you going to ask what I plan to do next? It might concern you, you know. Drake was taken aback. Are you going to tell me? Ultir said, as expected, you knew my identity from the start, and it seems you know more than that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made even the slightest attempt to extract information from me. Drake chuckled wryly. Suddenly, he realized that women were truly the most unpredictable beings. Ultir was the first to notice his unusual behavior. Before Drake could speak, Ultir said, there's no need for explanations, I'm not curious about how you know so much. Drake sighed, then smiled. Truly understanding women is the most fascinating thing in the world. Ultir rolled her eyes at Drake and turned to leave. One more question, why did you help me? Were you truly captivated by my charms? After witnessing how Drake incinerated the film of evil energy, Ultir knew that he hadn't used even a fraction of his full power in their previous fight. Therefore, she couldn't understand why, after knowing the extent of her past sins, Drake was still willing to help her. Drake fell silent for a moment, then said, you said you wished you could go back to a time when nothing had happened. It's precisely because we can't do that that regrets are born. We can't undo past regrets, but we can prevent future regrets. I don't want to see any regrettable futures unfold before my eyes. Unclear meaning, Ultir said, striding away with long legs, but a thoughtful expression on her face. The past cannot be changed, only the future can be altered. No one understood this better than Ultir, the wielder of Arc of Time. Watching Ultir disappear, Drake made a silent vow to himself. I will change all those regrettable futures. Phantom Lord. After Drake purged the malevolent aura film formed from the moon drip's residual gases, the villagers' memories were completely restored. They revealed their demonic forms, soaring beneath the moonlight, prompting a similar reaction from Drake as Lucy had experienced. Under the bright moonlight, the demons, laughing and dancing, seemed like angels. The village chief's son, being a demon, wasn't killed. His return resolved the chief's conflict, calming his previously volatile demeanor. In short, everything was resolved. After the celebratory feast, the group prepared to return to Fairy Tale. Because this mission wasn't officially sanctioned, Drake decided, like in the original storyline, to forego any payment. Following the village chief's wishes, Lucy received the additional Sagittarius Golden Key as part of the mission's reward, while the 7 million jewels were paid to the guild, not distributed amongst Natsu and the others who had executed the mission. Gray had overcome his psychological trauma, Lucy had gained a valuable golden key, Drake had successfully brought Ultir into his sphere of influence, leaving only Natsu to have seemingly accomplished nothing. Or rather, Natsu would face guild punishment upon their return, a thought that was almost too amusing to contemplate. After an arduous journey, the group returned to Magnolia. However, walking down the main street, Drake noticed that the residents of Magnolia seemed to be staring and whispering about them. Drake was utterly perplexed, initially suspecting that the fairy tale mages had once again engaged in some reckless behavior. After all, such actions were commonplace for fairy tale and nothing to be particularly surprised about. It's the fairy tale mages. They don't know yet, do they? How unfortunate. Gray spoke up, people are looking at us strangely. Happy chimed in, yeah, it feels kinda nasty. Drake nodded, sensing a current of sympathy in the townspeople's gazes. He wondered if the guild had caused some major incident leading to punishment from the council. He couldn't recall anything like this in the original storyline, though. Suddenly, Gray exclaimed, the guild looks odd. Drake looked up, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Fairy Tale was Magnolia's only mage guild, situated at the highest point in the town. From the main street, the guild hall was clearly visible. But the current state of the guild was clearly not normal. Numerous cylindrical objects were haphazardly attached to the three-story building, a sight that was far from the style of any renovation work. The group immediately quickened their pace, rushing towards the guild hall, while Drake, his expression darkening, fell slightly behind. Upon seeing the state of the guild hall, Drake instantly recalled the relevant plot point, the attack launched by the Phantom Lord Guild against Fairy Tale. The perpetrator was the Iron Dragon Slayer, Gajiel, who, like Natsu, had been transported from 400 years in the past. However, Drake hadn't anticipated that this attack would occur so soon after the resolution of the Galuna Island incident. Letting out a long sigh, Drake also hastened his pace, catching up with the others as they reached the front of the guild hall. The guild hall was in a truly deplorable state. A large number of iron pillars were embedded within the building, severely compromising its structural integrity. Without these pillars providing support, the entire building might have already collapsed. The Fairy Tale sign lay broken on the ground, shattered into several pieces, a brazen act of defiance by the attackers. Natsu gritted his teeth, his voice low and filled with barely contained rage. Who did this? Who dared to destroy our guild? The others also wore expressions of seething anger. Anyone whose home had been vandalized to this extent would find it impossible to remain calm. It was Phantom Lord, Mirajan announced, appearing from behind the group. As much as it pains me to admit it, we were indeed attacked. Mirajan led the group through a side entrance into the guild's basement. Drake already knew that Fairy Tale possessed a large, expansive basement in addition to its 3 visible stories above ground. The first basement level served as a storage area, and it also doubled as a safe haven in case of emergencies. However, Drake could also sense the presence of another level beneath their feet, emanating a magical energy that stirred a sense of unease even within him. That area was likely the Forbidden Zone, accessible only to the Fairy Tale Guild Master, where the body of the first Guild Master, Mavis, was kept, and where the Forbidden Magic, Fairy Heart, resided. With the upper levels of the guild hall destroyed, all of Fairy Tale's members had gathered on the first basement level. Along the way, Drake overheard the guild members expressing their outrage over the attack. Fairy Tale, notorious for its rebellious nature, would never tolerate such blatant provocation. The reason why no one had taken action could only be attributed to an order from their guild master, Makarov. Makarov was seated on a stack of wooden crates, a wine glass held loosely in his hand. Well, welcome back. He greeted them, his usual cheerful demeanor unchanged. However, Drake could sense the simmering rage that Makarov was carefully concealing behind that facade. Natsu was the first to erupt, shouting, "Old man, this isn't the time for drinking." "Oh really?" Makarov responded, feigning incomprehension. "You all went on an unauthorized S-class mission. Prepare yourselves for punishment." Natsu's throat seemed to erupt in flames as he retorted with barely suppressed anger, "This isn't the time for that." Before Natsu could finish his sentence, Makarov swiftly delivered a sharp hand chop to his head. And Drake and Gray, for joining Natsu in his reckless escapade. Drake, who hadn't intended to bring Natsu back in the first place, received a light hand chop along with Gray. Even Happy wasn't spared, though Lucy received a playful slap on her behind instead. Makarov's hand chop did nothing to quell Natsu's seething anger. "Master. Don't you understand the situation? Our guild hall has been completely destroyed," he roared. Makarov sighed, waving his hand dismissively. Calm down, calm down. It's not that big of a deal." He leisurely took a sip of his wine before continuing, "Phantom Lord. Those fools are only capable of such petty acts of vandalism. Taking advantage of our absence to trash the guild hall, how utterly pathetic." Murajan offered an explanation, "They attacked at night, so fortunately, no one was injured." Makarov shrugged. "We don't need to concern ourselves with such cowardly opponents. Let's just forget about it." Natsu slammed his fists on the table, his voice ringing with indignation. "How can we just let this slide? I'm going to go beat the living daylights out of them." Makarov delivered a decisive verdict, "That's the end of it. Stay here and work until the upper floors are repaired. I'm not in the mood to work." Natsu grumbled, his frustration evident. Drake quickly placed a hand on Natsu's head to restrain him. "Natsu, that's enough. Show some consideration for the master. He's been enduring this to protect Fairy Tail." Was Makarov truly afraid of Phantom Lord? That was absurd. 6 years prior, at the council meeting, Makarov had utterly humiliated Yosef, the master of Phantom Lord, in a decisive victory. Despite both being ranked among the Saint 10, there was a significant gap in strength between Yosef and Makarov. Makarov was simply exercising caution regarding the council. The council imposed strict regulations on all major mage guilds, and conflicts between guilds were strictly prohibited. Even if Phantom Lord had launched a provocative attack, if Fairy Tail were to retaliate, it would likely lead to significant repercussions. As guild master, Makarov couldn't make decisions based on personal feelings that might negatively impact the guild. Makarov looked at Drake with a mixture of relief and pride. It was clear that the guild couldn't be entirely composed of unruly children. Why couldn't they all learn from Drake's maturity and restraint? Before Makarov could fully express his thoughts, Drake turned to him and said, "But master, while we've had our share of conflicts, Phantom Lord wouldn't attack us without a reason. And they wouldn't simply stop at vandalizing the guild hall, they'll likely attempt something far more egregious. You need to consider that possibility." Makarov fell silent for a moment, his mind grappling with the same question, why had Yosef, in a fit of inexplicable madness, chosen to provoke Fairy Tail in such a blatant manner? Suddenly, Makarov shuddered, jumping down from the crates. Drake, anticipating some sort of decisive action, was taken aback when Makarov announced, "I can't hold it in any longer." Watching Makarov hurry towards the restroom, Drake sighed. It seemed he would have to take the initiative himself. Gajiel. Phantom Lord was one of Fiore's top mage guilds, even rivaling Fairy Tail on paper. Phantom Lord's master, Jose, and Fairy Tail's Makarov were longtime rivals, competing for the title of Fiore's strongest guild. 6 years prior, at a council meeting, Jose directly challenged Makarov, resulting in a severe beating. Jose's confidence stemmed from Phantom Lord's strength. Jose, like Makarov, was a Saint 10. Phantom Lord also had 4 powerful executives, the 4 elements, each equivalent to an S-class mage. Beyond the 4 elements, Phantom Lord had another formidable member. He was an Iron Dragon Slayer, Gajiel, similar to Natsu. He was the one who attacked Fairy Tail. Gajiel was also an acquaintance of Drake's. Drake knew this Fairy Tail attack was just the beginning. Makarov trusted Drake's abilities, so Urza had undertaken a separate mission instead of going to Galyuna Island. Urza returned to the guild on the same afternoon as Drake and the others. Natsu, Gray, and Urza all went to Lucis' place. This was Mirajan's suggestion, mirroring Drake's own thoughts. To prevent members from being attacked alone, everyone should stay together. Lucy's apartment was chosen as the meeting place. Poor Lucy, her apartment, always invaded by Natsu, was now a gathering spot. Happy, the mischievous cat, was worse than a husky. Hopefully Lucy was resilient. Drake didn't join them, he followed Levy and her team. Levy, a small girl with blue hair, was optimistic and knowledgeable, a rare intellectual in the guild. She and her two childhood friends, Shrew and Dor, formed the engine team. In Fairy Tale, Levy was Lucy's closest female friend, perhaps because Levy's magic involved words and she loved reading, mirroring Lucy's dream of becoming a novelist. Drake followed Levy because, in the original story, Gajiel attacked her, prompting Makarov's declaration of war on Phantom Lord. Drake wouldn't let Levy's team be captured and used as a show of force by Phantom Lord. As the three walked, a figure jumped from a rooftop, attacking them. Levy's team, while known mages, weren't strong fighters. They were caught off guard. As the figure's arm stretched towards Levy, Shrew and Dor prepared to shield her. They didn't feel the impact. They saw Drake blocking the attack. Drake held Gajiel's iron arm. I'll handle this. You go. Levy said, I remember. He's Phantom Lord's Iron Dragon Slayer, Gajiel. I'll get help. Drake shook his head. No need. I can handle him. We're old acquaintances, let's catch up. Go home. Levy had seen Drake defeat Laxus, she trusted him. They left after glancing at Gajiel. Gajiel retracted his arm, glaring at Drake. You're fairy tale trash, some nobody. I don't know you. Trying to get me to spare you. Drake sighed. Igneel and the other dragons had used soul dragon techniques to enter their dragon slayers, somehow affecting their memories. Natsu, Gajiel, and Wendy remembered living with dragons and learning dragon slayer magic, but forgot their shared time learning with Anna. Sting and Rogue retained that memory, but their memories of their dragons were flawed. While the dragons claimed to have modified their memories, Drake suspected it was a soul dragon technique side effect. Drake had been like a big brother to them all. Gajiel had followed him. Now he dared to speak so disrespectfully. Drake stepped forward. You've forgotten everything. Let's see if your body remembers. Gajiel's eyes widened. Drake was suddenly close, slapping him. Drake grabbed Gajiel's head and slammed him to the ground. Gajiel felt dizzy. When he woke up, he was flying with Drake. Fighting in town is too noisy, let's find a quieter place. Gajiel wasn't obedient, his arm turned to iron, striking Drake. Drake sighed at his disobedient junior, and threw Gajiel down. Gajiel crashed into the ground, creating a crater. Crawling out, Gajiel saw Drake. It felt familiar, he'd seen this person from below before. Getting up, Gajiel said, Who are you? Drake looked at Gajiel's fierce expression. I told you, acting like a thug gets you in trouble. Gajiel frowned, he felt a sense of familiarity. He'd heard those words before. Answer me. Gajiel's confused memories made him angry. His arm became an iron club, attacking Drake. Iron Dragon Slayer magic, unlike Fire Dragon Slayer magic, couldn't add elemental attacks, but its physical strength was immense. The iron club was powerful, but insufficient for Drake. Drake dodged the club. Spikes appeared on the club, then numerous smaller iron rods emerged, surrounding Drake. Drake stepped back, avoiding the densest area. Gajiel smirked. You can't escape. The iron rods extended quickly. Drake was trapped. Drake wasn't panicked, he laughed. Looks like you need more stimulation to remember. Flames erupted from Drake, the iron rods glowed red, then melted. The molten iron fell, scorching the ground, as Drake walked towards Gajiel. Gajiel felt a pang of fear and took a step back. What? I'm afraid. Thanks for watching.